All right, looks like we are live, and I want to welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie, and I am your host and moderator for tonight's much anticipated debate on morality. It is a privilege to have two experienced debaters with me to specifically engage the important question: does morality come from God? Mark Reid and Praise I Am. Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving us your time for this exciting debate. Before we get into opening statements and the debate itself, though, let's get acquainted, kind of break the ice a little bit, and go through some brief intros. Mark, let's start with you. How have you been? A little bit about yourself, also a little bit about your channel.
Hello, my name's Mark Reid. I'm an atheist and a secular humanist who believes in, having debates and having discussions and doing all of that kind of stuff. I do love science. I love all that kind of stuff. I love computer games. I love, I really enjoy stumbling my way through YouTube, and having discussions on the very fabric of reality is fantastic. So that's me. Yeah.
Mark, thank you for the intro. I do have your YouTube link in the description box for people to check out. So for the audience sake, if you like what you're hearing from tonight's awesome guests and you want to hear more from them, please do check the description box for the relevant links. Praise I Am. Good to have you back. How have you been? And also a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your channel.
Man, I appreciate you setting up and hosting this debate, Donnie. Your channel, to me, is indisputably the best for debates on science, philosophy, and theology. I also appreciate Mark for taking out his time to have a formal discussion with me on morality. So this will kind of be our sequel to our original discussion on my channel on this discussion. So Mark is definitely one of the more game opponents out there, so I'll have to be on my toes. I am stoked to hash this out, with Mark on some of these issues. But I have a channel, and I do like open discussions, panel discussions. We talk about apologetics. Atheists are always welcome. We usually go late at night, so if you want to come in and join these open discussions, you're more than welcome. And just come on in. So I appreciate it, man.
Praise, I appreciate the kind words. I also appreciate the introduction. Your channel is linked in the description box as well, especially for people who love those all-night open mics where Mark oftentimes makes an appearance, and definitely a ton of fun over there. And you both have gone at it in the open discussion octagon, but I'm not sure if you've ever had a formal debate before.
No.
And, okay, so I am pumped for this one. I know a lot of people are as well. I also know how much time, energy, and work goes into the preparing of these formal debates. Mark, he's given us his time for these many times. Praise you as well. And so I really do thank you both for that. And let me go over the format. So it's going to be a comprehensive debate, which I think is necessary when it comes to a debate specifically on morality. So we're going to be having between 14 and 17-minute opening statements, just to kind of be more easygoing, make sure the debaters can get all their points out there. Whatever is not used, we'll throw into the open discussion. As everybody knows, we could always use a little more open discussion in these debates. Then we'll do about 10-minute rebuttals, 8 to 10. Again, whenever's not used, we'll throw into the open discussion. Open discussion after the rebuttals about 50 minutes. It'll be more free-flowing, and Mark and Praise will kind of bounce questions off each other, address each other's points. Then we'll have a 5-minute closing statement where the debaters can wrap up their thoughts and points. And then, as always, we're going to get you guys in the audience involved with an audience Q&A, about 25 to 30-ish minutes. And so if you got questions for Mark or Praise, let me know who the question is for. And send me your questions. Tag me either at Donnie, at Standing for Truth. That way I won't miss them. Okay, so with that, Praise I Am being in the affirmative tonight. Again, the question, does morality come from God? We are going to give you the floor for, again, between 14 and 17 minutes. I do see your slides now. Ready to go.
Awesome.
Floor is yours, Praise. I'll start the timer whenever you're good to go.
Let's see here. All right. So go ahead and start it now. So Morality comes from God, divine command theory. That'll be my thesis tonight. So my thesis is surrounded on the divine command theory. But here's the formula, the conventional divine command theory formula. If God commands X, and X is obligatory, and if X is obligatory, then it is because God commands or commanded X. That is to say, if some act X is morally obligatory, God has commanded X, and if God commands X, and X is in virtue of God's command morally obligatory. Hence, God's commands are objectively binding to all people. However, I'm going to refer to or appeal to JMD Katz, and she is a PhD philosopher, but she modifies the divine command theory into two theses that dispels any circularity. So there's the ideal command theory may be characterized by commitment to the following two theses. The command part of this, or the command thesis of the thesis of the divine command I'm appealing to is moral obligation, just as what God would command. But then there's the good part of the divine command as well, being good just as resemblance to God's nature. So Mark and all atheists alike are categorically moral anti-realists. And the source is Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Oxford University Press, IEP EDU. And basically this is cashed out in several different forms or subcategories of moral anti-realism. We got the non-cognitivists, we have the moral subjectivists, we have emotivists, the non-theistic moral naturalists, moral nihilists, and then moral error theorists. And what I'm going to be arguing tonight is moral objectivists or moral realists, namely theists. And the source is philosophicallybasics.com or philosophybasics.com, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And this is cashed out or has forms of subcategories of moral realism as divine command theory is a subcategory or a form of moral realism. And there's ethical non-naturalism. And then we have ethical theistic naturalists. And then we have cognitivists or cognitivists. And those are all the categories or forms. And there might be other semi-subcategories that people might put in there, but those are the general ones. So demarcation is important. So the purpose of me providing the charts that were just shown is to illustrate that there is a very clear and distinct demarcation between moral anti-realism and moral realism. Hopefully this preempts any equivocation, conflation, or misattribution. I'm pointing this out because my opponent must operate within the boundaries of moral anti-realism if he wants to be consistent. My personal experience with atheists on this topic hasn't been very productive because they unknowingly or even knowingly argued as a moral realist when they were really moral anti-realists. They seem to have a tendency to borrow from my worldview while at the same time being oppositional to mine. So let me make this very or really clear. Mark is a self-proclaimed moral subjectivist, and therefore any real morality is illusory in his worldview. Therefore, he has the burden of proof to demonstrate how morals are illusory. So consistent morality for an atheist, example 1. Quote, evolution has no moral direction. An evolutionary understanding of human nature can explain the differing institutions we have when we are faced with an individual rather than with a mass of people, or with people close to us rather with those far away. But it does not justify those feelings. This is philosopher Peter Singer, The Life You Can Save. So here's a consistent morality for an atheist, example number 2. Quote, ethics is illusory. I appreciate that when somebody says, love thy neighbor as thyself, they think they are referring above and beyond themselves. Nevertheless, such reference is truly without foundation. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction. Anything deeper meaning is illusory. This is philosopher Michael Ruse, Evolutionary Theory and Christian Ethics. Consistent morality for an atheist, example number 3. The religious fundamentalists are correct. Without God, there is no morality. But they are incorrect. I still don't believe about there being a God. Hence, I believe there is no morality. This is Professor Emeritus of Philosophy, University of New Haven in West Haven, Connecticut. J. Marx, Amoral Manifesto. So, justifications for moral realism. The truth maker, alethic and semantic justification. Moral propositions correspond to moral facts. And the unique metaphysical justification, moral facts and properties are metaphysically sui generis. In fact, let's see here. I'm sorry, sui generis. I always have to get that. Sui generis. So moral realists don't have the burden to prove right or wrong, just true or false. So this is, quote, moral realism is a concept denoting that people can make claims about moral facts that are either true or false. It is a thesis about the existence of moral facts and does not make a specific claim about the content of these moral facts. Moral realism does not distinguish right from wrong. And this is Daniel Cole, PhD from University of Kentucky. So alethic and semantic justification, moral realism. And basically, the basic understanding is mental states are about certainty, propositions are about ontological necessity. Quote, certainty is a property of persons, necessity is a property of propositions, and some propositions can be necessary even though they are very uncertain. For example, some very complicated mathematical equation will be necessarily true, if true, but we may be very uncertain about it. And Louis Anthony, an atheist philosopher, said any argument for moral skepticism will be based upon premises which are less obvious than the existence of objective moral values themselves. And this is William Lane Craig, PhD, University of Birmingham, England, Be Thinking National Apologetics Day Conference. So, alethic and semantic justification of moral realism. A prioriism precludes scientific morality. So this is straight from Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and they have a little section called A Prioriism and Moral Epistemology, and they give examples. Here are some paradigm examples of a priori moral propositions. All murder is wrong. No person's good, or that no person's good is any more important than the good of any other person. And the other proposition that I ought do something volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity this weekend. So many philosophers think we can know some moral propositions a priori. Few deny that we can know a priori, or the proposition that it would be wrong not to do something, one ought to do it. And that's going to be important too coming up here. So a priori morality, pre-rooted morality in babies, confirms there is an author of morality. So this is from Springer, The Ultimate Enhancement of Morality. Quote, this is an excerpt from that in the section called Innate or Universal. Quote, is morality a social construct? Is its basics genetic? Did it develop through evolution? Did God endow us with morality? Or is morality a combination or some of these factors? So various findings show that our sense of morality is not a social construct, as the research of Paul Bloom, author of Just Babies, demonstrates. Babies are endowed with a sense of morality. This is Bloom 2013. And here's CNN. Are we born with a moral core? The Baby Lab says yes. So, quote, this is part of what they're in their little article they had. It is one of the life's biggest questions. Are we born knowing the difference between good and evil? Or are we taught our moral beliefs by parents and society? Philosophers and psychologists have long believed that babies are born with blank states, and that it is the role of the parents and society to teach babies the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, mean and nice. But a growing number of researchers now believe differently. They believe babies are in fact born with an innate sense of morality. And while parents and society can develop a belief system in babies, they don't create one. A team of researchers at Yale University's Infant Cognition Center, known as the Baby Lab, showed us just how they came to that conclusion. And here is from BBC Science. They also put up an article, Are Babies Born with a Sense of Right? So, quote, early theorists in psychology mainly took the approach that babies are born without any sense of morality and have to learn it as they get older. We know now that although a fully developed sense of morality does not emerge until adolescence or later, babies already show signs of a rudimentary moral compass. Moral responsibility demands kasi sui free will. I'm sorry, it's causa sui free will. And this is from Responsibility Control, A Theory of Moral Responsibility, John Martin Fisher, Mark Ravizza. And here's what they said, there's an excerpt from that book. Philosophers usually acknowledge two individually necessary and jointly sufficient conditions for a person to be morally responsible for an action, i.e. susceptible to be praised or blamed for it, a control condition, also called a freedom condition, and an epistemic condition, also called knowledge or cognitive or mental condition. So the first condition has to do with whether the agent possessed an adequate degree of control or freedom performing the action, whereas the second condition is concerned with whether the agent's epistemic or cognitive state was such that can properly be held accountable for the action and its consequence. So this is from Andrea Lavazza, and this is from Frontiers peer-reviewed publications. And she says, in fact, if one considers a condition of free will, the fact that it should be causa sui, i.e. it should be able to be continuously start new causal chains, such a condition is incompatible with determinism as it is usually defined. And this is from a companion to the Philosophy of Action. It's edited by Timothy O'Connor and Constantine Sandus. And here's what they say. On any account of free will and moral responsibility, the will must be causal, even if not causa sui, in order for agents to have it and to be morally responsible for their actions. And that's important because this is going to prove the next point, which solidifies everything. Moral responsibility denotes a causa sui free will, which denotes an immaterial soul. And here's a paper from Springer Publications, and you can see right here at the bottom, I have it highlighted. This paper argues that free will is an emergent property of immaterial soul. So causa sui free will, it indicates an immaterial soul, and this paper kind of goes into that. We can discuss that if Mark wants to, but I mean, it doesn't get any more clear than that, then yes, that morality points to God. So the unique metaphysical justification of moral realism, divine command theory, is, let's see here. Yeah, sui generis. So sui generis supernatural properties. So morals have sui generis and supernatural properties. So PhD J.M. Katz explains, by contrast, non-natural properties are generally held to be causally impotent and not discoverable by the empirical or scientific methods. Examples of non-natural properties include sui generis and supernatural properties. A different in kind from any other property, moral properties that are sui generis are thus non-reductive, irreducibly normative properties that can be explained as supernatural properties in divine command theory because they challenge existent scientific principles such as the causal closure principle, which states that all causes of physical events are physical. For example, if it is a moral fact that all acts of unconditional love are good, it is because all instances of unconditional love have the property of being good. And what we mean by unique entails that the moral constituents of moral facts, moral properties, or their instances fall into a metaphysical category of their own and thus are sui generis. Sui generis is a moral entity. It is metaphysically unique or sui generis insofar as it is neither reducible to or identical to nor metaphysically continuous with any other kind of entity. The moral rules are patently universal in analytic philosophy. Quote, In analytic philosophy, morality is by definition universal. As a consequence, if a rule is not universal, then it is not a moral rule. Second, according to moral psychologists, morality is universal because this is how lay people think of the concept of morality. If a rule is not universal, lay people are not likely to think of it as a moral rule. So analytic philosophers build their theories on the assumption that lay people do think of morality as a universal, and that it is universal. This is empirically testable and thus depends on the findings from the moral psychology. Indeed, psychological findings seem to undergird this argument of analytic philosophers. So these is, Katinka Quintilier, Delphine de Smet, and Daniel Fessler. So recap of why morality comes from God. Just one moral fact in reality needs to be true or false propositionally for moral realism to be true. That has been demonstrated, because to say there are no moral facts itself would become an objective moral fact and be self-defeating. Certainty is irrelevant because it's a property of persons. There are no defeaters of divine command theory, and hence phenomenological conservatism states a person is rationally justified in believing something with the absence of defeaters. Hence, the moral experience of divine command theorists is justified. A priori, here's another point of the presentation tonight. A priori morality that is true beforehand and not discoverable inductively, has been demonstrable with pre-rooted morality in babies, and the proposition
30 seconds.
It would be wrong not to do something, or one not ought to do. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy states the proposition is a priori. Moral responsibility requires Kelsey Sui free will, which M. Shurish in his paper Springer showed as an emergent property of the material soul. J.M. Katz and many others have shown moral properties such as rightness, wrongness, goodness, and badness, and sui generis properties that are queer, unique, and natural properties. Hence, they are non-natural properties because they are non-reductive, normative, and not discoverable by the scientific method. The fact they violate causal closure principle means they are supranatural or supernatural by definition. Analytic philosophers definitionally classify morality as universal. And with that, I yield and thank you.
All right. Praise I am. Thank you very much for that roughly 17-minute opening statement. I do want to remind the audience, if you do have questions for our debaters, please tag me either at Donnie or at Standing for Truth. I am currently all caught up on the questions that have already come in during just one opening statement. So Mark Reid, we are going to now hand it over to you. And whenever you're ready, you have 17 minutes for an opening statement. Oh, I think you might be on mute, Mark.
Okay, thank you so much. Yep, I've just got to do it at least once. Thank you so much, and I'll just get this going, and just tell me when it's up, Tony. That's great, mate. Thank you.
Yes, looks good.
All right, fantastic. And thank you so much for praise for being part of this debate. And thank you for moderating, Donnie. It's always a pleasure to be on. And thank you for giving me your time. I do appreciate it. My name's Mark Reid, and today I have the pleasure of taking the negative against the proposition, does morality come from God? So first off, we got to define what morality actually is. Now, these come from Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. These are the main definitions that people use. Now, one, descriptively, it basically is something to describe what morals exist in a society. So it's used descriptively to say, hey, they have these morals, or their morals are this. It's really the second one that we have to focus on, the normative definition, which should be the crux of this debate. What we ought to do, what a group ought to follow. And my opponent is basically saying that ought comes from a God. The specified, it's interesting to note that a sort of objective morals, you have to establish that moral facts actually exist. And today I'll sort of be arguing that there are no actual moral facts, only moral interpretations and moral evaluations. So there's no demonstrable reason to believe that morals are objective, independent of a mind. The diversity of moral thought indicates that there is no objective morality that applies to humans. And proto-morality, and I'm really glad that Prey's brought up sort of proto-morality in babies, because proto-morality also exists in social animals. And that suggests that morals develop with intelligence and social organization. The major problem with moral realism, or believing that moral truths are objective, is that the vast difference of moral thought between the people who all claim to possess an objective moral standard. Praise isn't the only one sort of saying that he has an objective moral standard. Other people do, and they differ in what they think is moral. Even within a singular religion or a denomination or individual members of a denomination, moral diversity occurs. This difference may be slight, but it appears that people asserting morals from a god cannot agree on what those moral facts actually are. Since their morals are drawn from interpretation from text or doctrine, the morals are therefore coming from interpretation and not any god. The other major problem is the proto-morality in animals that we will get to later. Essentially, morals do come from social context and biological context, as humans are social animals. It is purely in a biological sense that we see the necessary conditions of ethical behavior. The advent of a certain level of advanced intelligence and ability to communicate, and the utility of cooperative structure to the community of organisms, determines the level of structure of moral codes within a social group, whether that is human, primate, meerkat, or any other animal. These requirements for morality are acknowledged over multiple different fields of study, including biology, sociology, anthropology, psychology, neurology, and multiple others. Any claim that this leads back to any god must be demonstrated necessarily and not just asserted. Science has been analyzing moral imperatives, and it's found that mental state attribution, which can be a necessary input to social decision-making, relies on a network of interconnected cortical regions. These regions supporting mental state attribution are co-activated specifically during social decision-making processes, and we have mapped that during neuroimaging work using an MRI machine to investigate the neural correlates of moral decision-making. As stimuli, moral dilemmas or moral statements, pictures that induce emotional reactions are usually employed. A main difference between these stimuli is the perspective of the participants reflecting first person or moral dilemmas, or third person perspective, which are moral reactions. These emotions are tied to biological imperatives seen in all social animals, and the MRI imaging actually bears this out. So this is sort of common morality, and common morality does kind of exist. A survey of 60 diverse societies found that 7 cooperative behaviors was uniformly positive. In every society there was data, 7 cooperative behaviors were considered morally good. There were no counter examples. That is, societies in which these behaviors were considered morally bad. The survey also found that these cooperative models were widespread, with most appearing in most societies, how they were observed with equal frequency across all cultural regions. However, outside of these 7 traits, there were no uniform moral traits among all cultures. None. So it is only 7 that appears to be tied directly to biological functions within social groups that appear to be the backbone of any moral structure throughout the world. So this is our hypothesis. If morals are supernatural in origin, then we should not see the same moral tendencies in the natural world. If they have come from a god given to humans, then we should not see these same moral tendencies outside of human beings. So when we're talking about moral core, what's the core of morality? We basically have 2 things. We have empathy and reciprocity. They form the moral core of what we see in moral foundations. Empathy is the ability to understand and emulate the feelings of another. It is one of the foundational sense for social organisms to allow cooperative functions of societies. From empathy, we can form compassion and altruism. for others, as we can sense how they feel and react accordingly. This mental state prevents intersocietal violence and fosters care of weaker members of society. This is invaluable for social species, as their strength relies on the individual contribution of every member to the group effort. To put it basically, have you ever watched a movie and felt sad for the characters? This is empathy at work. And don't forget, they have mapped that to the human brain using an MRI. They are aware of which section of your brain lights up when your empathy actually comes into play. I want to play this. This is Jambo the gorilla. Sorry. I'm trying to take off the sound. So that's Jambo, who was, you could see that the gorilla, and everybody could see that the gorilla was actually concerned with the welfare of a boy that had fallen into his pen. This is empathy. It could tell that the boy was upset and tried to comfort him. Jambo also kept all the other gorillas away from the boy, realizing he might be upset by seeing the other gorillas. This is empathy at work. Even for something that's not our species, we can still feel empathy. The second backbone is reciprocity. Now, this is basically called social exchange. It's the sense of being given the same reward for the same action. When that action is taken by one member to assist, another should get the same amount of assistance under the same circumstance. This gives a foundation for fairness and equity and equality, that things ought to be reciprocated in members of society. Now, I'll try to turn the sound off, but I'm not having much luck with this. I do apologize. So basically, these Cachapan monkeys, and I love them. They're so cute. They basically will love grapes, but they don't mind cucumbers. So it will eat the cucumber at first until it sees another monkey getting another grape. This basically says, well, that's unfair. I did the same work. I deserve the same reward. That's reciprocity. That's having a sense of fairness. The Cachapan monkeys are very interesting and does show proto-morality. I'm not claiming this is a true moral system, it's not codified, but it does have the moral foundations that we see in humans. Monkeys can lie by faking an alarm call to sneak extra food. This behavior is seen as immoral in their society, and the monkey, if caught, may be punished by the rest of the monkey society. This has been seen in multiple different species and is a clear indicator for moral violation and punishment. This behavior is best explained by biological imperatives and mental states that have been generated by neurological function that have been observed under scientific conditions. There is no reason to think that the moral imperatives are the providence of any deity or supernatural being when they are best explained by the behavioral systems. I will look forward to examining some of the moral precepts that my opponent is suggesting are objective and absolute, and see if they do hold up under any circumstance. So culturally viable, these are some of the major problems for the sort of morality from God. Moral diversity. There are cooperative traits we do see in most of society, but cultural behavioral variation has been described for non-human primates, other animals, and humans, bring us to question if moral diversity occurs at all. Why does it happen if morality is laid down by such an all-powerful being? In an adaptive context, human morality was not invented from scratch in our hominid ancestors, but could build on a rich set of pre-adaptations, which is empathy and reciprocity. A critical transition was the transformation of these elements to not only an individualistic sense and second-party context, but also to a group context, what is best for the group. So this is the Euthyphro dilemma. It has two prongs, two branches, if you will. And basically the question is something good and just because God wills it, or does God will it because it's good and just? Originally by Plato, and Leibniz expanded on it. So basically God wills it. So basically the problems with that is anything, and I believe this is the branch that praise is going down. It basically means that anything could be good and evil based upon God's will. Anything at all. Killing your neighbors, throwing things at the traffic, anything, if God commands it, could be good. It makes God unnecessary. If good and evil are just products of a despotic will, then God does not have the wisdom to choose what is good, as nothing God could choose would be evil. And then the third is, why do God's morals obligate? If the only reason to follow God's will is punishment or reward, then morality becomes incoherent, as it is just a might makes right proposition. And any mightier deity, if it exists, could override that moral obligation. Branch 2, it basically, it is just and good. I believe sort of praise is trying to put a foot in either camp, and sort of saying it refers to God's nature. Well, if it kicks the can down the road, so if he's given nature as the other reason, that means that there's something that God's will does not have sovereignty over. If God's nature is outside of his will, this renders God as not omnipotent. The necessity of God is removed, as any agent could relay that nature without God being necessary to do so. So you've got to choose one branch here, and there are problems with both. And I look forward to discussing the Euthyphro with praise. So what needs to be demonstrated for a morality from God? The problem of diversity of moral thought must be explained. Why do different societies have different moral values if they are derived from a omnipotent God? Again, the branch of the Euthyphro dilemma must be chosen and the implications accepted. It is not enough to give an argument for a morality coming from God. This must be demonstrated to be so. A valid argument, or one that is logically consistent, is not enough. The argument must be sound or demonstrated to be true. And this is an important one. Just because I can logically say that morality comes from a supernatural creature like a unicorn doesn't mean that that is a sound argument. The premises are true, or most likely true, and therefore the conclusion is true. That must be demonstrated. And many people claim that their God's morality is truly a morality from God, and all disagree what the actual morality of God is. They cannot all be right, but they can all be wrong. And praise is going to have to demonstrate among all of the different moralities from God that are out there, that his one is actually the true one, even though everybody else claims exactly the same thing. So how much time do I have, Donnie?
You have just over 2 minutes, Mark.
Okay, I'll quickly go into this because I wanted to talk on this. So the superiority of secular morality. Now, atheism has no position on morality. It has a position on whether a God exists. It doesn't have any unified moral system like a church or a religious institute may do. Secular humanism does, but atheism does not. It is not what atheism is for. Secular humanism is based upon utilitarianism and consequentialism, and it also refers a lot to science, so the scientific investigation of how the impact on the natural world occurs, impact on our societies, impact on our mental states, impact on our physical states. It's usually goal-orientated. For example, I use the well-being of humans and humanity in general, so our society. It can make moral judgments into the future where religious-based ones cannot. Because religious-based morality usually relies on a text, it can tell us nothing about moral judgments of things like cloning or asteroid mining or any of these other things. It only covers what is laid down in doctrine, not things that come up in the future. So secular morality is not dogmatic. If something is against the well-being of humanity, it can change. It can say, hey, we ought not do this because we now know it is harmful. Religion can't do that. its moral judgments are objective and therefore cannot be changed. And that leads to problems. A lot of the problems are things like trying to catch up with secular laws, trying to change the church so it is not morally reprehensible as some churches are and have been, done away with. And that fluidity is actually a strength, not a weakness. So it can evolve with changing knowledge. And I can talk more about my morality if Praise wants as well. But thank you very much for your time, and I cede the rest of my time if there is any.
17 minutes on the dot. Very impressive, Mark. I appreciate both of your opening statements. Comprehensive, lots of points on the table to rebut and to discuss. So that concludes the opening statements. Again, Mark and Praise, appreciate the visuals, the presentations, and the work that was obviously put into those. So we're moving now into the uninterrupted rebuttal portion of tonight's debate. Praise, we are going to give you the floor, and you have up to 8 to 10 minutes to rebut. If you need to share slides or anything like that, just make sure to notify me. Floor is yours.
I appreciate that, SFT. Yeah, there's going to be a lot to tackle here, so I'm going to try to get the best much as I can in there. So I'm going to tackle the euthyphro first. We'll just go down in order. So Mark mentioned there's some sort of a dilemma. First of all, it's important to note the euthyphro was aimed at the gods, polytheism, not monotheism. Can Mark elucidate why the gods are under the same dilemma as a Christian God? Let's, for the sake of the argument, accept that this dilemma applies to the Christian God. Firstly, the euthyphro is really recognized as the grounding problem. The concern that moral truths and facts would be objectively brute or arbitrary. So moreover, divine command theorists will reject both premises of the euthyphro because it is a false dilemma. Divine simplicity diffuses not only the grounding problem, but the euthyphro entirely, because God's simplicity as a property of the divine essence means his essence is identical with his nature. God is not separable into bits and pieces, as Mark is insinuating. He is not a class of things either. So by identifying God's goodness with God's essence, divine simplicity, we are able to claim that God's own life is the transcendental standard of goodness. Thus, there is no dilemma. However, when we make claims like God is good, God is just, we are not saying that these are divisions within God's life, since God is in no way a composite. These claims are not strictly logical identities, since they were then saying God is good and God is eternal leads us easily to the conclusion that goodness is eternity, which is pure nonsense. His commands flow necessarily from his moral nature. God wills something because he is good, and something is right because he wills it. Now I'm going to get into the absurdity of Mark's claims here, his assertions claiming that normative moral laws can come without God. So first of all, objective cannot include psychological states. Any normative naturalistic morality with God falls prey to the naturalistic fallacy, coined by G.E. Moore, in the claim that any reductive explanation of good in terms of natural properties such as pleasant, desirable, or false is simply, it's good because it's natural. And any non-naturalistic morality without God must invoke brute facts because these non-natural properties are causally impotent, not causally related, which are problematic and self-defeating. So Paul Mayer laid out 5 challenges to natural moral realists. This is what I think that Mark is trying to insinuate. I don't even know if he even understands really the philosophical terminology, but so the ontological problem, how do such moral principles exist? And number 2, the epistemic problem, how do our moral sense intuition track such principles? Number 3, the influence problem, what authority does the existence of such property or principles have to supervene in our behavior? And then you have the axiological problem, what entities have value and deserve moral consideration? And then we also had, lastly, number 5, the methodological problem. How do we know anything about arbitrating between moral claims when they conflict? And brute facts are contingent anyway because they are appealing to their necessity would be explanation for why they are true. Therefore, since all brute facts are contingent physical facts, they must admit that further explanation as to why they are even if just in principle. So we're going to get past that one. Also, he tried to push this idea of subjective morality, but I'm going to, defer to J.M. Katz, PhD, says, it is widely held that moral truth should be grounded in something and not dependent on arbitrary desires, beliefs, and so forth. First, if a moral statement were true on the basis of what an individual desires, it would be the case that multiple contradictory statements would be true. Surely, if one were to make contradictory statements about the existence of a particular chair, it would necessarily be the case that either the chair does exist or it does not exist. There is no maybe. Does the chair really exist, Mark, or does it not exist? And it's the same with morality. It certainly does not follow that one ought to act in accordance with another person's wishes simply because they wish it. The subjectivist ought to say, I do not approve of X, rather than saying X is wrong. Subjectivists attempt to prescribe on the basis of majority's attitude as a meta-ethical theory. It is not much different than a sociological survey. This is what Marx's morality is reduced to, is a mere sociological survey. There is simply no reason for being obligated to the will of any moral arbiter outside of God, and it runs into this is a good homunculus fallacy, which states that any argument that accounts for a phenomenon in terms of the very phenomenon that is supposed to explain results in an infinite regress. So if the subjectivist says X is wrong and X is not wrong, are not contradictory because in both cases the referent is different. Even if that statement is motivated by some internal desire, the statement X is wrong is making reference to some external thing or act. So even if they say something, well, it's true in both cases, it has nothing to do with the person, it has to do with the act. Even if the statement is motivated by some internal desire, the statement X is wrong is making reference to some external thing or act. This kind of indicative statement is saying that the thing or act out there is wrong, thus it would be no longer subjective. For example, A.J. Ayer, who is a moral anti-realist, moral non-cognitivist, declared that when we say stealing money is wrong, we don't express a proposition that it can be true or false, but rather as if what we are really saying, stealing money with the tone of voice indicating that a special feeling of disapproval is being expressed. So cultural relativism has been debunked for a long time. For example, was Nazi Germany a culture subject to its own culture attitudes and leanings? Is Berlin the culture that ought to be examined in order to determine what ought to be normative for the people of Berlin? Why not judge the German culture by the common attitudes of Europe? The subjectivist simply cannot answer these without begging the question. Even if there were some grounds of defining culture as a city or a nation, the culture subjectivist has a difficult time dealing with moral reformers. For example, if culture X says that a caste system is the most noble of all social systems, and a moral reformer comes along to change that social system, that reformer would actually be immoral since he went against a cultural norm. This is the case even if the culture actually agrees with the moral reformer. So subjectivist theories can never become normative theories. If moral claims are simply the relating of one's approval or disapproval, moral claims end up being merely descriptive. In other words, moral claims simply are describing the fact that a person either approves or disapproves of a thing, hence is an anti-realist classification. And also, I want to, this crazy nonsense. Oh, thank you. So this crazy nonsense about apes, forming some type of morality. I'm just going to quote Richard Dawkins. He says, the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we would expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, i.e. no God, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. So, this is consistent with secular morality. There isn't like atheism and then secular morality. No, it's all under the same category of moral anti-realism. And let's see. And empathy is an emotion. This is something that Mark tried to leverage, but it is a mere emotion. Morality is epistemological and ontological. It's nothing to do with behaviors or emotions. So I think that was pretty weak and flimsy. I think that this is self-refuting. And as far as utilitarianism, all we have to do is invoke the trolley problem, and that just dissolves away. Richard Mervyn Hare replied, if moral principles are limited to those that maximize well-being, then for anyone not interested in maximizing well-being, moral principles will have no prescriptive force. And with that, I'll just end my time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Praise, for that roughly 10-minute rebuttal. That is about a minute we can throw into either the discussion or audience Q&A. And so we're going to hand it over to Mark Reid now. Mark has his up to 10-minute rebuttal. Mark, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Excellent. I wasn't aware this debate was on my morality and not morality from God, but here we go, right? Divine command theory, yeah. So basically, Praise wants to sort of say that God commands X, then it is obligatory. God's commands are binding. God's commands are appropriate with his nature. If God's nature doesn't change, then his commands never change. God's commands have changed, so therefore his nature changes. So that just blows that straight out of the water. The moral obligation is just what your God commands. And he sort of said that all atheists are anti-realists. Now, I'm an anti-realist. In fact, I'm a meta-ethical relativist. But not all atheists are anti-realists. There are ones that believe that natural properties give realistic morals. I'm not in that camp, but, you know, Praise just doesn't understand what atheism is. So must operate within the boundaries of moral anti-realism. Well, I'm going to. Meta-ethical relativism is an anti-realist. So because so much is focused on my morality, I'll sort of say what I believe and where my morality comes from. So basically, meta-ethical relativism says that as long as we can agree on a goal, a utility of well-being for individuals and society, then we can make some objective moral statements about what is good for that well-being and what is bad for that well-being. Now, I'm not claiming that is anything except what is being decided by the society, but I can then say, hey, you know, Nazi Germany, their goal was to establish the Third Reich. There were actions they took which were detrimental, they were bad for that objective. So even by their own standard, they did horrendous actions because it would lead to the downfall of their country. So I can sort of make moral pronouncements on them. It doesn't really matter. So the whole idea of constructing something socially, like sort of Praise said, oh, it's illusory. The law is also a social construct. Break the law and see how illusory the consequences are. Just because something is a abstract doesn't mean that it cannot be used for utility's sake. The law, there's nothing to say that the law has to exist, but it does, and we all abide by it because we don't want the consequences, and it's the right thing to do. And altruism, which is based upon empathy, isn't illusory. Empathy is not illusory. It is something we can map in an MRI. And empathy by itself doesn't make morality, but the whole idea that everything is illusory about anti-realist thinking is not true. And this is sort of a smoke and mirrors that Praise is doing to try and say, hey, I don't believe there's anything real there. There are real emotions. It doesn't mean that they make a moral system. So the quote that he get, I mean, I love it. He quote mined one of the philosophers. The guy was actually quoting Nietzsche. He said that moral phenomenon does not exist, only a moral interpretation of phenomenon. And so he's not saying that morals don't exist at all. He's just saying that real moral things don't exist, only the moral interpretation of things that are happening. And that's how we decide what is good and bad. So any argument whose premises are less obvious than objective morals So moral subjectivity is less obvious than saying that a God commands X or a God commands Y. It's very simple to say that, but that doesn't mean that the God commands is actually true. This is the thing, like sort of praise wants to color it as, oh, because the premises of subjective morals are the arguments of the premises are less obvious, then they must be untrue. No, why is that? That does not follow. And I want to really focus on the way that he sort of said and colored his things that babies. What his article actually said when he brought it up on the screen was not that they had morality. It said they had a rudimentary sense of justice, and this is the bait and switch. It says they have a rudimentary sense of justice. He claimed they had a moral system. So this was, I already covered this on empathy and reciprocity. Reciprocity is the emotion we feel that gives that sense of justice. And yes, it's been documented well in babies and also animals. Nothing he said addressed the animals. And one of his things, one of the papers he referenced did not say morality. It said a moral core, which I went over. And this is the bait and switch. It doesn't say that babies have morality. It says they have a moral core, which again is that sense of reciprocity and empathy. And even his own article says a fully developed sense of morality needs adolescence. It only develops by adolescence. So if God is handing out morality to babies, why isn't it fully developed? Why is it only just a bare hint at what it can be? Why is it only the backbone, empathy and reciprocity that are there? Free will, he went on and on about free will, which is sort of not really applicable to me because I'm not a hard determinist. I think there is ways that you can make free will choices. So you can throw all of that out the window because it doesn't apply to me, because praise has assumed something about me. And for some reason, it seems to be my morality on trial. For some reason, I didn't know that was the debate today. And one of the things that he brought up with a philosopher saying all causes of physical things are physical. So does that mean God is physical? Since when did God become physical? I don't understand why he brought that up. And sort of, he brought up a quote saying that to lay people, moral universals do not exist. Just because people think of morals as universal or not universal, this is an ad populum fallacy. A philosopher has noted that people think of morals as universal. And so he's saying, well, they must be. No, that's not true. Just because people think in a certain way does not make it true. That is an ad populum fallacy. But, obviously he has quote mined some philosopher who remarked upon what people in generally lay people thought. And he said, oh, well, that's what the philosopher believes. No, that's not the case. He's not saying that. Moral facts must be acknowledged, or else if you deny that, it's a moral fact. No, it can just be a natural fact. It is a natural fact of moral anti-realism. It's not a moral fact. It's just a natural, basically, that we make moral interpretations of natural phenomenon. That's all. Like the whole idea that if you deny moral facts, then it's a moral fact is just, I don't know where he got that from. That's insane. And again, he also went to babies. Babies don't have morality. They have the roots of morality, and his own papers said that. So don't listen to praise bumping that up to a moral system. Babies do not have actual morality. They have the roots of morality, a moral core, or a rudimentary sense of justice, for what his papers said. So just because something is not discoverable by science does not mean that the supernatural exists. Just because you say, hey, our current best way to find out what is true about reality can't discover something, that is no reason to assume it does exist. It can't discover magical flying unicorns either. There is no reason to think they exist because it's beyond the realm of science, which is what Praise was saying, which is so crazy. You do not get off the hook for demonstrating something just because the best method to demonstrate something cannot find the thing that you are talking about. And you might say, hey, it's supernatural, it's beyond the natural, there must be some other way to discover it. We'll present that way, and then we can investigate whether it exists. But unfortunately, I have not been presented with a way to discover God in any kind of, reliable sense.
Mark, thank you very much for that 10-minute rebuttal. Gentlemen, great debate so far. Lots of points to discuss. We have now concluded the opening statements and the rebuttals to the audience. Again, I'm all caught up on questions. We've got a ton of fantastic questions for an audience Q&A. We're now jumping into everybody's favorite part of these debates, the open discussion. And for the open discussion, we have roughly 50 minutes. Mark did just end with his rebuttal. So Praise will allow you to pick the first point or ask the first question for the discussion. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. You got 50 minutes.
Awesome. I just think if I clear a couple of things up, Mark, I think it would bolster this conversation into being a more productive. And then, I just think it'd be a lot better if I just address a few things and let you respond to it. So I think you misrepresented several of my arguments. So let me just elucidate what some of the things you might have missed. So when we say that moral facts are truth apt, that's what we're saying, that it has nothing to do with moral or cognitive certainty like psychology. So, and this is like that. When we get into metaethics and even metaphysics, several philosophers have recognized that these are ontological. So something that's ontological is not tantamount to something that is psychological. Do you see that difference, yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I realize that when you're talking about it, you're talking about an ontological truth. But I only think that moral ontological facts only exist in virtue of your meta-ethical framework. I don't think they exist outside of that meta-ethical framework. So they are in fact with reference to the framework that the society has.
So I think I'm going to try to clarify this a little bit more. So do you agree that the degree of certainty would not affect the ontological status of a moral proposition?
The degree of certainty would not. Yeah, correct. Yes,
okay.
But only ontologically in reference to, for instance, so meta-ethical relativism says that you set up a framework, right? So in my case, it's well-being of the individual and of society, right? So that is my utility that I go for as a meta-ethical standard in which to achieve. Okay, so ontologically, so me killing someone, for instance, me shooting you or something would be detrimental ontologically to that framework, right?
Right. So I'm glad you conceded my point. At least we got to that point. We can delve through and hash out the viewpoints. But another point is that moral.
I'll just sort of sum it up and sort of say that. So what I'm saying is that I think that objectively, if we have that framework, we can make objective moral, truth apt comparisons. But I don't think there is any objective reason why we have to choose that framework.
Right. That's fine. We'll get through that. I just wanted to make sure we got that point clear. So when moral realists, we're not arguing that something is right or wrong. We're arguing for truthity and falsity. Do you understand that as well?
I do, but I don't think you can demonstrate that, as opposed to all the other people out there claiming objective moral facts that are arguing for different truth as well. because the whole point is that we have a million people out there claiming objective morals, and they all disagree.
Right, but do you agree that sentences, we can frame it into like a moral sentence or any type of sentence, like is it true that the sun comes up every day? Like that is a truth apt proposition. Would you agree?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So all we have to do as moral realists is to have one proposition to be a fact or true in reality for our position to be valid. Do you understand that?
I don't think so. I think that just because nobody sort of rational disagrees with it doesn't mean that all of your morality is truth apt, is somehow objective. I don't think that's the case. I think even morals come from an objective place, or they don't.
So if that's what, this is what's deemed in philosophy, that if it's real in reality, then it's automatically objective. And this is, I think, you need to look a little bit more into that. And also, I think that you would have to give a case. You would have to give a case of something that is truly mind independent. Well, we have ontology to do that. So the properties of goodness, rightness. Hold on, let me finish. So the properties. No, I know you can say no, but I mean that doesn't necessarily defeat it.
Everybody has ontology. You don't have access to ontology. I've been over this with you.
I'm not talking about people's ontology. I'm talking about the propositions themselves have ontological content inside of themselves. Like when we have moral goodness, moral badness, rightness, wrongness, those are non-reductive. Those are ontological. And they're not reduced to any natural properties.
Well, I think they're only ontological in reference to the framework of the society or group that has made the meta-ethical framework. I don't think there's anything in the universe. As in fact, you quoted Richard Dawkins as saying the universe is pitiless kind of thing. And that's true. That's what he said, yes. But just because the universe is pitiless doesn't mean that humans or organisms or anybody else has to be. He's basically saying
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he's basically saying there's nothing in the universe to, sort of say this is wrong, but that doesn't mean we can't.
Well, he's including evolution as part of the paradigm what he's talking about.
Sure.
He's saying anything that is with physics, any laws of physics, any biological processes, that it's indifferent, that the pitiless and indifferent. So there is without God, even I quoted several people that say, without God, there is no such thing as morality. It's a special pleading at that point. But I kind of want to circle back to the ontology of the moral properties.
Yeah, that's not true. There's no such thing as objective. And I've heard theists a lot of the time saying, hey, without objective morality, there's no real morality kind of thing. But if you're taking the normative definition of morality, simply a morality that applies through society, whether that be objective or subjective, there is morality. Like you can't from the definitions of morality, you would have to basically redefine it as objective morality, which I think William Lane Craig does a lot. He sort of says, hey, without objective morality, you don't really have morality, which just is not true.
Well, I kind of refute what you said, that you can explain ontological properties or of moral propositions. No, you can't, because you're saying, even though you're saying it's like part of some type of culture or group that agrees to it, but that's still natural though. These are not natural properties. These are non-natural. They're not reduced to any natural property. They're irreducible. Yes. They're normative.
So I'd like you to demonstrate that morals are supernatural in some way, because you're saying they're not natural. Sure. And it seems to be like we can actually see the foundations of morality, empathy, and reciprocity with an MRI machine. So what part of this system is not natural? Where does this come from?
Yeah. Well, let's give an example, like the property of goodness. You can't find that under a telescope, microscope. You can't extract it out of a frog. You can't find it, looking in the sky. It's not discoverable through scientific methods. And this is what I was saying. It violates the causal closure principle, therefore supranatural. And I quoted J.M. Katz, who is, a PhD in this field. So I don't see anything that you're showing that is contrary to this.
Okay, so
or that would refute that.
You can't find the law under a microscope or written in the sky or any of these things either. And it is still a very large part of people's lives that we have to follow the law for our own well-being. So there's a lot of things you can't find under a microscope. It does not make them supernatural. This is the thing. You've got an abstract concept. You've got these social constructs which are mixed with the emotions that we feel, like empathy and reciprocity, that guide us through this. And you're sort of saying, hey, because I can't get this morality under a microscope, it has to be supernatural, is completely false. Show me the law under a microscope. Yeah. Show me that the law is binding me right now.
I said supranatural, and that just means transcendental. That's what it's defined as, Mark. Like anything that it transcends or that is not explainable or that cannot be justified by the scientific method, it necessarily indicates that it is supranatural, which is just another. It's just another word for supernatural. Like it's the same thing. And yes, that's how people define the word.
Because I thought it meant exactly the same as supernatural. It basically says transcending the natural, supernatural is the definition. Yeah. So you're sort of saying, hey, don't use supernatural. I'm not talking about supernatural. I'm talking about supernatural.
Well, I mean, that is the terminology that philosophers use. You're going to have to deal with that and engage with it. So it is by definition supra, or we call sui generis. So sui generis and supranatural are two of the same, I would say, category. So they're not reductive. You can't reduce them to natural properties. Natural properties are reductive. These are not reductive. They're normative.
Well, sui generis means unique.
Yeah.
It means they're unique. Supernatural. Well, no, praise. Like I understand that you don't think that. So when you're saying natural, like it seems like you're equivocating between natural as opposed to artificial and natural as opposed to supernatural. Right? Because there's nothing in the natural world that is the law, right? It's just what humans made up. It's an artificial construct. But it is natural as in the things that it designates and covers are just natural things. Human behavior, actions taken by humans in society. Right. There's nothing supernatural about the law. We just made it up.
Well, no, the description of it entails supernatural properties. So the fact that they are immutable, they do not change, they are normative, they're non-reductive. You cannot reduce goodness into non-goodness. It doesn't work.
There is no spectrum. Law is supernatural?
I'm talking about the moral properties of goodness, badness. You can go into what is just, like the property of being just. Those are irreducible. They're normative. They are immutable, and they're not discoverable physically. It's by definition outside of science and naturalism. It's not. It's why they're defined non-natural.
Oh, praise, sweetie! Just because you can't find something physically doesn't make it supernatural. That's the thing. Like I can't find any kind of abstract. I can't find a perfect circle or a circle the size of the solar system or a globe the size of I can't find that. It doesn't make it supernatural. It's just a construct. It's just something that has been created. It's like the law.
It's not created though.
Find that physical.
There is no genesis of what the principle or the property of goodness. There is no genesis of that.
Yeah, there is.
Do tell us where it
Okay.
originated from.
So,
then
yeah, so sort of as social species, what
No.
we did was we had individualistic tendencies,
and then where do
those
they get it
individual
from?
tendencies. What do you mean, individualistic
It's just an infinite.
tendencies?
It's just an infinite regress. If you're gonna appeal to what societies and different peoples and groups, it just becomes a
What do you mean? Where did we get it from?
homunculus fallacy.
Everything has individualistic tendencies to start off with. Like animals today have individualistic tendencies. Like, do you compare something like lions, which have a social dynamic, and they're much more social creatures than, say, the
I'm not
solitary
talking
hunters
about
like
that.
a
I'm
tiger.
talking about the property of like
Well,
goodness,
you asked
badness.
where it came from. You asked where it came from.
You're not. I mean, you're not sufficiently addressing it.
We developed cooperative actions. We developed cooperative actions, and those cooperative actions allowed us to flourish.
I mean, you got to give a foundation. This is how justification works, Mark. If you want to justify your claim, it has to be outside of your claim. So what are you justifying that in?
I can get papers for you on the development of morality if you want.
But you're just regurgitating the same stuff. It's just recycling the same stuff. I mean, you have to have some type of justification or foundation for that. So
it is beneficial for us to have a cooperative, social, dynamic system in which we can operate, or else humans don't do very well. And even, I know you don't believe in evolution for some weird reason, but okay, just say tribes people and stuff, if they didn't cooperate, if they didn't implement a moral system in which to work under, they would not have survived. If they went individualistic tendencies. So you're saying that the tribes people that were individualistic, the ones that were solitary, they would survive better than the people that banded together and be cooperative.
What I'm saying is that's just a sociological survey. That's all you're appealing to. It doesn't amount to anything. It's bubkiss.
Look,
and that's what it amounts to.
You asked me where it came from. You asked me the genesis of it, and I'm giving you the genesis of it. I can't give you the genesis of it because you haven't.
I mean, you haven't. You're just begging the question.
I'm going to jump in. Praise a little bit of over talking. Mark, if you'd like to finish your points, and then praise.
The strange thing is none of this is showing where a God has given morality to humans. All of this is attacking my morality, which is not the subject of this debate. Praise. Even if my morality was completely wrong, you have done nothing to show that your God actually gave a morality. All you're doing is attacking the opposition. So why don't you actually get to demonstrating that morality came from a God instead of asking me where morality comes from?
Well, no, that's what I'm getting to. I'm getting to a point that if you can't sufficiently defeat my position, then I am justified. This is called in phenomenological conservatism. If there's no defeaters, then we are justified in our belief in the divine command theory. But I want to I just think you're just repeating and regurgitating the same stuff. It's like, I mean, we can go to the next point.
That's not true, because if I say that a magic unicorn gave us our morals, and you can't defeat that, that does not justify a belief that a magic unicorn gave morals. What I think is irrelevant. You have to demonstrate it actually came from a God. You asked me the genesis of morality. I start to give it to you, and you say, no, you're not allowed to give that origin. No, that is basically where I believe that morality came from, and I have papers to back me up that that is.
I'm saying
you're bankrupt.
Your explanation is vacuous, and that's what I'm saying. You're unable to, because you're just begging the question. You're going to have to get a justification.
My explanation.
I just let you talk for 5 minutes. I mean, I wasn't even talking over you, Mark. So just stop whining.
And then you interrupted me halfway through.
Gentlemen, I want to get us back on course. So, Mark, let's allow you to respond to whatever you'd like to without interruption, and then praise will give you also an uninterrupted response. And then if you'd like to shift the topic, feel free to do so. Mark, we'll hand it over to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a three-step development process. Basically, you have individualistic tendencies, family groups within certain organisms. They band together, cooperative actions start to take place. There you get a more developed rudimentary moral system based upon the needs of how that group has to survive, what is good for the group and bad for the group in terms of survival. Then on the advent of agricultural development, you have a more robust moral system that covers a vast array of different needs for the individuals within that collective group. And that is how morality developed. It developed with intelligence, communication, and technological progress.
Okay, so I'm going to respond to that, and hopefully I can get it all out. So, firstly, Mark is appealing to what he's appealing to. Like the very thing is built in his own premises. What he's appealing to, which is begging the question. He's saying it came from some type of group or some type of organized peoples, or whatever it is. I forget exactly how he characterized it, but. Is it because it's just assuming what he's trying to argue? So no, I'm asking the genesis. It cannot be the genesis of moral rightness, wrongness, badness cannot come from the very thing that you're trying to explain, because that's an ad homunculus fallacy. And I lay that out in my opening. So, and also, like, since Mark doesn't understand sui generis properties, like, he needs to get more informed in that, because these are immaterial, non-natural. They're defined non-natural. And the fact that they're non-natural already puts it in the sphere of supernatural or supernatural properties. Now, you don't have to appeal to, like, the, divine command theorists or divine command theory, but it would still be outside of space, time, and material or matter. And like Mark hasn't, addressed that sufficiently. But also, another thing I'm going to correct him on is I said to deny there is no moral facts itself is if you're going to say that is a fact, then you just refuted your own argument. So to say that there are no moral facts would be, if you're going to claim that is a fact itself, then you're just again like repeating the same thing over and over. So yes, the necessity of a moral fact is already ingrained inside of reality. That there is at least one moral truth that we know of exists, because to say there are no moral truths and say that it's a fact would be self-defeating. So I just want. Mark, if you want to respond to that, do you understand my argument, at least now, what I tried to lay out? Okay.
Yeah, sure. So I said communities. So basically, Fraser's sort of saying, hey, this didn't happen. Basically, that lone humans are incredibly weak in the natural world. We're incredibly fragile. We get absolutely destroyed by just about any other animal out there. It is not lone humans that would survive. It is humans working within a cooperative social system that had structure in order for those humans to survive. That is where the sui generis, the unique things come in, because not all of those cooperative features had the same needs and had the same ideas about how to survive in a very hostile world. So this provides the diversity of moral thought that we see that praise can't account for and hasn't addressed in the slightest. Diversity of moral thought is the whole idea behind unique moral outcomes for different communities. And so the idea that it's not sui generis is wrong. You can have unique outcomes through the different environmental needs of these precursor humans and humans in general when we were going from...
Okay, so can I cut you off?
Hang on. No.
You're just rambling, Mark. I'm just going to forget my point and let me just jump in there. Like, can you just stop rambling for a second?
No.
Gentlemen,
I let you speak.
So, Praise, if there is something you disagree with that Mark says, just note it down, and then you'll get more than enough time to address it when he's done. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the diversity. But as we moved from sort of individualistic families to hunter-gatherer tribes to cooperative communities, that is the way that morals developed. So the whole idea, I already addressed this, and this is sort of ridiculous that I have to again, that no moral facts exist is not a moral fact. that could be a completely natural fact. It could be that there is no God and that is just a natural fact. And so it's not a moral fact. And this is where Praise the Eye wrong. There's at least one moral truth that isn't a moral truth. It's just a natural fact. I don't know why you keep calling it a moral truth, because there is no moral significance in it.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, I'm going to first address this too. Like, he's claiming the community of individuals of moral agents. Therefore, it denotes the origin. It denotes the origin of itself. Again, that's the ad homunculus fallacy. I've mentioned that like 17 times. But I would like to press this further to show you how God is necessary, even in a community, is the idea of moral responsibility. And as I showed, I gave several citations of this, that moral responsibility, it denotes causa sui, or, it's this, hold on, let me see it here. It's the idea that you have unadulterated free will, where you can, your own causation, it's self-causation within yourself. So that alone would dismiss any determinism or any even type, I think, of compatibilism, because compatibilism is just another form of determinism anyway. So we're talking about like a super special libertarian free will that is necessary, a necessary condition for moral responsibility. So are you saying that these communities, quote community, are they morally responsible? If they're not, then your whole point's refuted anyway. It's moot.
Yeah, they're morally responsible to the community. I'm not sure what you're saying, like self-causation within yourself. Like, as I've said, I'm not a hard determinist. I think there is free will. And the weird thing you just said is that determinism is the same as compatibilism. I don't know where compatibilism is the idea that you can mesh the free will of an individual with the determinism of natural things like natural physics and the natural world, that things are deterministically happening. So I don't know where you get that idea that free like what? I don't understand.
Okay, so causa sui, free will, is a special, unique kind of free will. It is the will that can have causal chains within yourself of causation of your decision. So it's a unique. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Like, one of the epistemic conditions for moral responsibility. This is, look it up in Stanford yourself, is a freedom condition, as I mentioned in my opening. So I'm challenging you to. I'm pressing you to demonstrate how any community would have these conditions, or they would have sufficient conditions to have causa sui free will. And also that causa sui free will, as I demonstrated with another article from Springer, that it's actually an emergent property from soul. So are you saying an immaterial soul, is that naturalistic, Mark? And yeah, I mean, good luck with that.
I don't think there is an immaterial soul. You'd have to demonstrate that actually exists, not just make an argument that it's not logically incoherent. You'd have to actually demonstrate that. But the whole idea that neuroplasticity, what you can do, you have a feedback loop. And one of the weirdest things that you said is that emotion doesn't affect thoughts and things like that, where clearly we know that it does. Emotion definitely affects thoughts and behaviors. So I don't know why you said that earlier, but it's crazy. The whole idea with this causa sui free will is that neuroplasticity can, as described by a neurologist, I can't remember their name at the moment, but it can fill in gaps to solve problems, but it can also explode in unexpected directions. It can basically form neural links that were not previously there seemingly at random, at arbitrary amounts. So it may be the seed of free will we have in neuroplasticity. I'm not convinced that hard determinism is true. It seems like I can feed back into my behaviors and choose my behaviors depending on what thoughts are there. And it may be that neuroplasticity that allows me to do so. So I don't see why I should accept that you're saying, hey, you're hard determinist, when that's not what I believe. Why should I suddenly accept that? Why is that not a straw man?
I'm saying Causi sui free will cannot be explained naturalistically. It's necessarily the case that it's tied with an immaterial type of construct. And I gave evidence of that. I actually put a paper up, so you can deny it all you want. You can say it's not there. You can disagree with it. You don't have. You can just show all the, whatever you want to call the argument for credulity. If you want to have if it's credulous or incredulous to you, that's up to you. But I gave the citations tonight. And moral responsibility denotes an immaterial, it's an emergent property of soul. So I think that, you're just outgunned here. You can't respond to that.
Well, I don't think sort of a philosopher remarking on causi sui free will, and from the misinterpretations you've done of multiple philosophers that I brought up and showed, I wouldn't trust that you've interpreted that one correctly either, to be honest with you. Just because a philosopher said a thing doesn't make it true. And I might point out, and here's the thing, Praise, this is the problem here, that even if there was an immaterial soul, that still does not prove morality comes from a god. You are so far off topic, you're stumbling around in the bush, clutching at straws, trying to find anything that is wrong with any model, except you won't actually address your own. Even if there is an immaterial soul, Buddhism could be true and we could be resurrected, like reincarnated kind of thing. Doesn't mean morality comes from a god. Hinduism could be true. Doesn't mean morality comes from a god. There could be a million things that are supernatural that are not, in fact, a god. So would you please stick to the topic, demonstrate that morality comes from a god, especially your god. Maybe we can address the euthyphro, because I don't get your response to that. Because you said commands
let me respond to that really quick.
Nature. Yeah, okay.
So the gish galloping, let's just try to say one topic at a time. So
well, I haven't brought up many topics, Praise. You've brought up all the topics, and I think I should be able to bring up a topic.
Well, we'll visit that, but nature of the
we've only got 15 minutes, so I would like to go into some topics, actually.
Yeah, gentlemen, let's do this because we did just hit the 30-minute mark, and Praise, you did pick the first few. So that means we got about 20 minutes left. Mark, we'll allow you to pick the next topic. We'll go back and forth a bit on it.
Okay, well, I'd like Praise to respond to what I said.
Yeah, I just think you're making it unfalsifiable. If we know that morality transcends nature or any type of scientific materialism, then we can invoke whatever God is out there. Then it becomes theological. So if we get to the point at least that there is a higher power, whatever you want to, this is where we get into the Bible or go into the Quran or whatever, but it does denote the Christian God because he would be part of that program. So, I mean, you're just whining and crying about something that is irrelevant because that's why we need theology in the first place. So it's an irrelevant, I think, something to bring, or your argument you're trying to form there. So go ahead.
Yeah, you think it's irrelevant, dude. Like, seriously, Praise, you've just said I make it unfalsifiable. No, the God is just unfalsifiable. I don't make it anything unless you can come up with a way to falsify it. And I'll eagerly await how we falsify this deity that you've proposed. It just is unfalsifiable. And you've sort of said as much, because then you've got to go to theology and other things which don't provide a falsifiable method, I might add. But I do want to address the euthyphro, because that is a big deal, and you seem to be trying to occupy both prongs at once. So you said that commands flow from his nature, and God is good because he wills it. Is that right? Do I have you right there?
Yes. The position I was presenting tonight is divine simplicity, and that you can reduce to any type of reductive type of explanation of divine command theory. It escapes the idea of the grounding problem. So all your voicing, Mark, is the grounding problem. But see, we resolve that grounding problem because we can say that with God's nature, it is tantamount to his essence. So there is no issue there. It's a false dilemma.
Okay, so God's nature is tantamount to his essence. And how do we get from God's nature to a moral, like where do morals come from then? What part of that do morals come from?
What part? So God's not a part. That's the whole point. That's the point of divine simplicity, that he's not composed of parts.
Okay, so you've mentioned God's nature, and that's his essence. Do the morals come directly from that essence? Are they objective from that essence?
Everything flows from the nature of God, but there's not something else that is separated from that, because God is absolutely simple.
So does the nature of God change?
No.
So why do the morals change then?
What morals changed?
Well, do you still think the morals of the Old Testament should be implemented?
Yeah. I don't have any objection to that.
So stoning to death somebody for picking up sticks should be implemented on the Sabbath.
First of all, yeah, so you don't understand Hebrew law. Like this, even the syntactical structure of it is what we call casuistic law. So the casuistic law is conditional laws. They are not prescriptive laws. So it's like a misunderstanding that I don't think you know what you're talking about. Also, we had atonement laws that God put in place where people would not be stoned to death because they would have atonement available. So I just think your misunderstanding of theology is the issue.
Okay, so you disagree with the punishment, but do you think it is bad to pick up sticks on the Sabbath? Do you think that's a moral truth?
Yes, because it's a high-handed sin.
Yes.
It's not the fact that people picked up the sins, it's the intent, their motivations, their motives is what made that bad.
So do you think that a man having sex with another man is evil?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. And I think that because it flows from God's nature, that it's natural that a man be with a woman. Therefore, if it's a perversion of God's natural law and how he organized reality.
Do you think it's evil to wear mixed thread?
What do you mean evil? Can you expound? Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, things are either good or evil, right? And if it's outlined as a sin in the Bible, it's evil, right?
I would say yes. I think it does, because God is a holy, righteous being. So, he is a holy person. So yes, or holy being.
Do you think it's evil to eat shellfish?
And like, I think you're misunderstanding that too, because these are casuistic laws. Like, these are laws for your health that has nothing to do with your soul. So I think it's a categorical error anyway.
Yeah, but they shouldn't change. This is the whole point. You think that the Old Testament should be implemented exactly as it says, because
it was
God's
never meant to be a
change.
moral law.
And those things are under God's nature. So
it's
if they
health
do
laws.
change, if what is good and what is bad changes, then there is something about God. Because moral values flow directly from God's essence, then God's essence has to necessarily change for those moral pronouncements to change.
No, we ought to eat healthy. That's what he's saying. There's like, you even know what moral oughts are. We ought to do that. It's prescriptive. So we ought not mix back in those times with God in the tabernacle. Well, I mean, it's yes, because we're not under the tabernacle. We're not under his like moral, like he was there directly in their presence. So that is a different circumstance. We're not.
Sorry, I don't understand. It sounds like what you said is that morality depends on whether we're under a covenant or not.
No, a theocracy or not. So if we're not under, yeah, so we're not in the same. We're not under a theocracy right now. So we're not under the same conditions as those people did. But yes, if the theocracy was here today, yes, wearing fabrics would still. We ought not do that, but also eat shellfish. We ought not to eat shellfish because it's bad for our health. And I think you're conflating and miscategorizing things, and your misunderstanding of theology is absolutely abhorrent right now. But I mean, so you can get better, though. I would help you out, though, man. I'd love to help you out there, Mark.
Okay, so the weird thing is, and here's the weird thing, Praise, you've basically said there are objective moral facts that flow directly from the essence of God, and then you've gone on to say that those moral facts don't apply because we're not under the same conditions as the people back then, and that's exactly what you said verbatim. So how can something not be a moral fact when it changes depending on the conditions that we're in?
Well, what I mean condition is like we're in the succession of time that we're not under a theocracy. So yes, the principle itself would still be valid today. It's just that we're not under that because we're not under a theocracy. So it's irrelevant to us. But the principle still holds. We ought not, in the presence of God anyway, have mixed fabrics or do any of that type of stuff. So I just think you're just misunderstanding like the covenants and basic theocracy. Like, do you understand what a theocracy is? And like, we're not under a theocracy right now.
It's just very weird that you've sort of said that morals flow directly from God's nature. God's nature doesn't changes, but the morals that we're under changes because we're not in that society anymore, which is moral relativism. If you didn't know, it's sort of saying, hey, we're not in that theocracy anymore, so therefore the moral system changes because we're not doing that thing anymore.
We're just not under it. It doesn't change. It just we're not under it anymore. That's all.
It doesn't change. We're just not under it.
Right. So let me put it this way. If we were under theocracy today, it would still apply to us today.
But in a certain way, you've got to address whether stoning somebody to death for picking up sticks on the Sabbath is a good action or a bad action, morally speaking.
It's a bad action. I mean, I didn't make any bones about that. I said it was bad because it's a high-handed sin.
So Moses was a bad person.
Where did he pick up sticks?
No, no. The stoning to death of somebody who picks up sticks on the Sabbath is what I'm talking about. Because somebody picked up sticks on the Sabbath and Moses stoned him to death. Correct?
No. Where does it say? That doesn't say that anywhere. As far as I know, but I'm willing to be corrected on that. But yeah, I think we're veering off of the debate. But if you want to continue with this, I don't mind.
Okay. So it's Numbers 15, 32 to 36. Now the children of Israel were in the wilderness. They found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation. They put him under guard because it had not been explained what should be done to him. Then the Lord says to Moses, "The man must surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." So, as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. Is that a good or a bad action, morally speaking? Like what Moses did?
It is good.
It is good. That's a good action.
Yes.
So anything, and that's in the Lord's nature, is to stone people to death.
Well, it's in the nature of God that anyone who commits a high-handed sin in His presence, yes, that is a death penalty. So you don't understand holiness, right? The holy character of God. His standard is much higher than yours, Mark.
So where does so what determines what is a sin and what is not?
Anything that misses the mark of perfection. So you can say transgression of the law is another type of, there's different criteria that the Bible lays out. So one is transgression of the law, one is missing the mark, another one is any unrighteousness.
So you would you support if somebody said, hey, people that pick up sticks on the Sabbath should be stoned to death?
Well, it's not just picking up sticks. It's because it was his motivation. It's called a high-handed sin.
Just say it was me and I decided, hey, I got a lot of work to do. I have to do my gardening. It's the Sabbath. I don't believe in God. I think it's stupid. Let's just do my gardening. I pick up sticks on the Sabbath, just going, well, I don't care what God wants. Is it good if I am stoned to death?
Are you saying that is the same thing as a high-handed sin? Because I don't think you understand what a high-handed sin is.
I don't know what a high-handed sin is.
I think you need to look into that. Yeah.
I think that you're just sort of trying to avoid the question.
No, I'm not.
It's actually... Is that morally... How can that be morally good, an objective truth, that picking up sticks, like stoning somebody to death in the Bible is good, but outside the Bible it is not? How is that an objective moral fact?
So I think you're confusing a sin that is done out of ignorance and then a high-handed sin. Like you need to learn those differences. Yeah.
What was my sin if I said, if you told me beforehand that God will punish me, and then I did it anyway? Explain to me, what's a high-handed sin then? One where I'm aware?
Sure. So basically, it's you sticking two middle fingers up at God, grabbing your crotch, and yelling at him profanities, and then pissing on any type of holiness, righteousness, any type of things that's sacred to God, and pissing on it. That is a high-handed sin.
Okay, just say I did that. I did all of that. So before I went gardening, I went, as atheists do every single Sunday, as our tradition, we do exactly what you said. Is it good if I am stoned to death?
If you did the high-handed sin, like what I just said, absolutely,
sure.
Yes.
Okay, so you would support stoning to death of people because they insulted and then violated what you think your God's commandments are?
Well, it's not just in general. No, this is in the presence of God. God he was abiding.
Isn't God everywhere?
No, he was actually there. I would say the angel of the Lord was there de facto. Like he was actually there. His presence. He's present, but I'm talking about his holy presence is like his direct presence. That his person and his we call I guess you can call it a theocracy or a theophany. I mean, so like a Christophany or a theophany of God in that exact place. Yes, if you do that in the presence of the direct presence of God, that really does merit the stoning of someone. Absolutely.
So the problem here comes, Praise, is that you've basically said that there's these objective moral facts that flow from the nature of God, which do not change, that are applicable always. Objective moral facts are. It doesn't matter which mind views it or which mind does not. The problem is that you've now made it contingent on whether God is present or not. So what does it matter if they are objective moral facts? What does it matter if God is present? And plus, I thought God was omnipresent. I must be, that must be strange. But just say God was present when I did it. You would still believe that people should be stoned to death for picking up sticks. And that's where your thinking gets you. Basically murdering somebody over nothing.
So the severity of the crime itself is a whole nother issue, and whether the principle itself exists. Like it's a non-argument. Oh, because I disagree with the consequence that it's severe, therefore it can't be a principle. That's your argument, and it's a non sequitur.
No, it's just that most people in society would see that as absolutely abhorrent, cruel, and it would probably be against most international laws because it's just a cruel and unusual punishment. Just like any of these sort of punishments back then belied the moral understanding of the people that made them. I don't judge them for doing these cruel and brutal things back then. They didn't know any better, but that's moral relativism for you. The fact that you want to re-implement these kind of things if somebody angers your God is reprehensible. it's reprehensible.
So this has nothing to do with angering God. It's that he's a just, righteous, holy being, that everyone is under his moral governance, that for him to be just, he must punish. But he's out of his righteous or his loving properties that he has supererogatory properties, which means that it goes beyond obligation of good, that he provides grace and mercy to people that want it. So, like, you've, I think, mischaracterized our God, butchered our God, and I think you're just propping up a straw man.
Well, you can't have perfect justice and mercy. Mercy is a exclusion to justice. It's a way out of justice. It means justice isn't applied. So you can't have perfect justice and any mercy, because perfect justice means that you are implementing the sentence to its fullest. Mercy is sort of just belaying that justice and saying, hey, we're going to offer you mercy instead. So you can't have the two things side by side. Oh, okay.
So
all right. Well,
justice was demonstrated when Jesus died on the cross. That was the justice. So then he can't apply mercy to those because of what Jesus did on the cross. His act of sacrificial love, agape love, is supererogatory. It goes beyond obligation. It's moral praiseworthy by philosophers, and that I would even argue that supererogatory actions themselves indicate God, because nothing natural would explain them anyway. So the whole thing is, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sort of haven't demonstrated that morality comes from a God, but let me sort of apply my morality to this situation, a person picking up sticks. What I would say under my morality, that if you are concerned with the well-being of humans and society, you would never stone somebody to death for any kind of malfeasance like that, regardless of what it is or who is present, because it's not only bad for that individual, it is also bad for society to punish people that brutally for something inconsequential. What it would do is create a fear atmosphere of totalitarian retribution from some kind of theocracy. So to me, stoning someone to death for picking up sticks is immoral, because it will not get you to where you want that society to be.
So all you're doing is positing utilitarianism, consequentialism, that the consequence makes it wrong. And that's just so easily overturned. Ever heard of the trolley problem, Mark?
Well, it's not based only on consequentialism. It's based upon utilitarianism and consequentialism. So the intent also matters. I'm not sort of saying, hey, I'm totally in the consequentialist camp, but the intent does matter as well. And how does a God solve trolley problems? It can't.
Well, it does, because we would say that it's the sacrificial act that it's called virtue ethics. So now you're conflating virtue ethics with utilitarianism. So they're two different categories of morality. I just think you need a little bit more research on these things, Mark. Like, it's unfortunate.
I don't
but
think so, Praise.
I
think you need to find a little bit more humanity and tap into that natural sense of empathy you have, because you're talking about stoning somebody to death for picking up sticks. And that is so wildly, radically, theologically terrorist-based that you really should re-examine your priorities. You do this hate speech on gay people, so just basically say it is wrong for them to love one another in a physical way, which, I don't know how you get to being such a hateful person from God loves everybody to these people are wrong for doing what they're doing. They are evil, or their actions are evil, when it doesn't hurt anybody. So I think you need to tap into that empathy and realize that doing this to people is actually bad. It's bad for you.
Let me put it back. Let me put the ball in your court. Show me one secular humanist community or culture that's ever succeeded. I mean, there isn't any. It's the only ones that have. So can you name one thriving culture that has ever been any type of secular humanist, or if they all been secular humanists and not one of them has succeeded?
Humanist.
Yeah. or humanist, or
Well,
whatever you want to.
secular
Yeah.
humanism sort of only came with the advent of science, like modern secular humanism will only happen during the Enlightenment, which was relative a very, very recent time. I can point to secular governments which have succeeded. I mean, the United States is a secular government.
No,
So,
they're
yeah.
not. I would say no, because it's founded upon the founding fathers put the Constitution in light of the Bible and God. So no, that's just false.
No, they didn't. The only time that "In God We Trust" was placed on the currency was in the 50s, and also they amended the Constitution to say "Under God" in the 50s. It was actually based upon secular
Every
principles,
single
the religious freedom amendments of the Constitution. Yeah.
Every single father of the USA, original fathers, they all base their beliefs on God. Not even one. I think maybe one or two of them didn't, but the whole 98% of them didn't. We're not
Actually, they were
atheists.
mostly deists. They were mostly deists, and what
No.
deists?
No, they were
yeah,
Christian.
they were. No,
They were
deists.
98% of them are Christians. Yeah, so you have 1% that's deist, and then maybe 1% that's atheist. But yeah.
Yeah, no, they weren't. They were deists.
I'll have to show you, Mark. Yeah, I'm gonna have to show you that.
But sort of America is a secular nation. It's not ruled by any kind of theocratic government. It's secular. I don't know why you don't understand this.
Well, it's to protect religion, though. It's not because it's secular, has some type of secular type of precept. It's actually founded to protect religion in the church, so that the government can't affect any church assembly. So I just think you don't understand what you're talking about there. But so it's all right, though. It's all right.
Gentlemen, I will say we've hit the 50 minutes, and we had about an extra 4 minutes in light of some of the time not used in openings and rebuttals. And so if you would like to, gentlemen, firstly, excellent back and forth, very free flowing. And I think for the most part, we were able to touch on all of the major points for the debate. We've had an excellent chat, very lively live chat with a ton of excellent questions. So, gentlemen, if you'd like to go into openings or closing statements, we do have 5 minutes on the clock to wrap up our thoughts and points and address anything that we feel might be left hanging. And Praise I Am, since you're in the affirmative and you started with your opening statement, we will give you the first 5 minutes. And therefore, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
I appreciate Donnie for you setting this up tonight. I actually enjoyed it. He gets passionate, and I have nothing against Mark. I actually like him. I think he's a great guy. I enjoyed talking with him. I mean, it's going to have some clash there. So if he felt disrespected anyway, I apologize if I disrespected him. But I think. All right, cool, man. That's all. I mean, that's good, because that's what I don't want to try to to come down anyone or make him feel bad. That's not my intention, but. Hopefully tonight at least gives people the lead to believe that this should check some of these arguments out. That when we talk about moral realism is a real argument, that we have, different types of ways we can do that. We can go through metaphysically. We can do it through alethic type of propositions too. I argue tonight that there's certain moral propositions that are necessarily not natural. It's indisputable pretty much in a lot of philosophy, that things like the principles like goodness, badness, rightness, wrongness, that they can't be reduced to anything natural. You can't reduce them. They're normative. And since they are immaterial, you can't investigate them scientifically. That is, by definition, it goes into the supernatural or sui generis properties. I mean, and the thing is, if you don't invoke God, with these non-natural properties, then they become brute facts. And brute facts, it's so easy. They become contingent facts. And this is what I was showing tonight. And then also moral responsibility. I don't think Mark addressed that properly. That basically there's a unique special or a unique type of free will that is denoted, and it denotes a soul, an immaterial soul, and I supplied citation for that. And like and then Mark went into like sort of communities, like it's just begging the question that communities determine the community's morality, and morality is not defined in terms of behavior or social contracts. I mean, that just becomes a sociological survey at that point. No, morality is defined in epistemology and ontologically, and I think we need to, try to understand them more clearly when we're talking about morals. And I mean, babies. We didn't really get into the baby stuff, but no one. I mean, where no one was saying that the babies have full capacity of morality because they're not even fully developed yet cognitively to even do that. How would they even realize they had perfect morality, or fully developed morality? But it's there. It's just they haven't their cognitive awareness of it hasn't fully formed yet. So I think Mark, propped up several different arguments that were, I think, self-defeating arguments that didn't amount to a hill of beans. But subjective morality, like whose truth is right, like so one person says this is right, another person says that's right. Who's the moral arbiter? And if there's no moral arbiter, then it's really amorality. Then you're saying, things like the Holocaust and all these things are just indifferent. So if someone goes into a fiery building and saves someone, like a heroic act, a supererogatory act, and then you have someone like Hitler killing all the Jews, those are indifferent under Marx's purview or paradigm. So, I mean, you can see how self-defeating this is. All this requires a moral author. And I provided several arguments that I thought were pretty persuasive. I gave citations tonight. I hope people rewind and take a little bit more closer look at it, before they poo-poo it and dismiss it. And with that, I end my time, and I appreciate everything from both Donnie and also Mark. God bless.
Thank you very much. Praise for that 5-minute concluding statement. 2 hours really has flown by on this very important topic. Again, does morality come from God? Mark Reid, we've got your 5-minute concluding statement as well. And so whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I do want to thank Praise for having this debate and discussion, and it has been quite lively. And I hope I haven't offended him either. But I think I'm fine. I know that back and forth we both have our own opinions, and that's perfectly fine. And sort of this whole idea that a morality comes from God, he hasn't actually demonstrated it. Yeah, he's made a couple of arguments. They might be logically consistent, but that doesn't mean they're actually true. In fact, nothing has been provided for an actual God. As I said before, you could replace this with a magic unicorn. You could replace it with some kind of extra-dimensional aliens who designate what morality is. There is nothing that says this is from a God. He hasn't actually demonstrated that in the slightest. And it seemed to be more, well, I'm going to attack secular morality rather than actually address where his morality comes from. And he asked me where the morality came from, and I explained to him where our understanding, our scientific understanding of where it comes from. We can investigate morality scientifically, because if morality is an interpretation, a moral interpretation of natural facts, then we can actually determine what is better for people scientifically. Like if we have two actions and we want to have the healthiest and most flourishing beings, me attacking the other one is objectively immoral under that system. So the whole idea that all of these things are, interchangeable is not true. If somebody goes into a building and saves somebody, i.e. the well-being of that person they're saving is actually increased by their actions, that is moral. If the well-being of other people are destroyed in the Holocaust, and, I'll bring up Godwin's law, right, that you have to bring up the Nazis in any moral conversation. But, that is obviously detrimental to the well-being of humans. So under my moral system, you can still make objective assessments of phenomenon around you, moral assessments, whether this is moral or that. You don't need a God for that. And I'd really encourage you, use some of that empathy. It is the natural tool we have for treating each other well. And yeah, babies are born with a sense of empathy as well as reciprocity. But you also see that in less developed primates and other animals. Like meerkats is one I brought up, where the one meerkat does sentinel duty and benefits everybody to the detriment of itself. This isn't something that is just in humans, these senses, these things that we have to socially cooperate. And you don't need a god for it. You can just say, hey, humans are important to me. That may just because I'm a human, but that's still true. It's still true for me. So I did sort of explain where morality comes from, this need to cooperate between us. And I'm not looking for everybody to agree with me. All I'm looking for is compatible morality. If you're a Christian and think it comes from God, that's fine, as long as we can agree that the well-being of us is important, that I should treat you with respect and you should treat me with respect. I don't need you to agree with me. That's all I need, is for us to agree on what's important in life. And part of that is the well-being of us, of us. So lots of systems are compatible. But if you want to stone people to death for picking up sticks, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a big problem. And I really recommend you start to use that empathy and say, hey, if I saw that in front of me, that would be a terrible thing. I don't believe Praise is a bad guy. I don't think he would, approve of somebody being maliciously stoned for something so base. And I don't think he really hates gay people, but some of the things that he says are based upon this outdated idea that morality has to come from some divine being, when it doesn't have to. Sorry. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much for that concluding statement. Gentlemen, excellent debate. You both most certainly did not disappoint. There's been a lot of hype for this debate, and it really was a debate to remember on morality. So to the audience, please share this content around. These kinds of debates are important, and critical thinking is important. That's why we host these kinds of debates. So real quick, I'll give our guests tonight a minute break as I go over some brief announcements. So, of course, tonight, the Great Morality Debate. We've got another 4 shows for you. Last week was busy. We had about 5, including an open mic that went about 8 hours. And so tonight, the Great Morality Debate, of course. Tomorrow, we've got our second podcast debate. So last month, we had a podcast debate on genetic entropy. Tomorrow, Grayson and myself. So I'm excited for this one. Human chromosome 2 fusion, same time, 9 EST. So make sure you're here for that. The next day, we'll be having a Q&A, 2 hours of questions and answers. So skeptics and non-skeptics. Make sure you're here for this in the live chat. Starts at 6 EST. So Dr. Grady McMurtry, he'll be addressing questions, criticisms, objections, curiosities, whatever it is, on age of the earth, creation, evolution, the flood, and more. And then on Friday, we've got Ken Rock, who was in the chat. Good to see you, Ken. And Dr. Dino. So this will be the evolution debate. So it's a broad topic. Kent and Ken will be discussing the 5 stages of evolution. So it should be fun. That is on a Friday. So 4 shows in a row for you guys. Okay, let's get into some audience questions now. Break time is over. Again, Mark and Praise, I appreciate all the time, work, energy, and effort you both put into this fantastic debate. So here we go. Let's get into some questions. Whoever the question is for, as you guys know, we'll make sure gets the last word. If you guys felt compelled to have a little back and forth on specific questions or short rebuttals, of course, we will allow that as well. Okay, so we've got a question here. We'll start at the beginning. Nakia Boyer, question for both. What are your thoughts on why man seems to be the only creature that truly appreciates beauty in art, culture, and nature? What evolutionary benefit would this be for survival? Okay, Mark, he ended with his concluding statement last. Praise, we can start with you if you'd like.
Uh, yeah, I think it's actually a pretty good question. What would evolution like? What would be the need for art, religion, and other things like that we experience in reality? Aesthetics, like it just seems to me like reproduction or reproducing and self survival are the most important things. That's why to me it's patently impossible morality could come from evolution for that very reason. And many other atheists have voiced that too. Evolutionary biologists have said this, but that's a good point. I'd like to hear what Mark has to say about that. Go ahead.
Mark, floor is
Yeah,
yours.
so there's certain things which trigger in us certain emotions, and we know this from different types of art, because not only art can be beautiful, it can also trigger horror responses. Like there's a titanophobia, I think it is, which is sort of the fear of lots of little holes and eyes kind of stuff, and it triggers a sort of fear response in us, and that's evolution saying, hey, if you see lots of eyes that are not human, that's bad, that's real bad. So there's a multitude of different emotions we evoke through arts and culture, not just sort of beauty and appreciation, but we know that vibrant colors trigger an appreciation. So does lots of greenery, which is usually good for us. Triggers a lots of emotion. It is because of this triggering of emotion. It doesn't really do anything for us evolutionarily. It's a exaptation rather than an adaptation. So the difference is adaptations are things which help your species, you've adapted to, things that come as an unexpected consequence of your evolutionary development, like being able to see the bright colors because we needed fruit. That's sort of an exaptation. It's something that was unintended, but a result of the evolutionary process. So art is one of those. It triggers emotions within us.
Well, thank you, Mark and Praise, for the response there. Question was for both, so we'll move on to Creationist Crybaby. And CC's got a question for Mark. Do you think emotions co-evolved with morality in apes as a survival mechanism?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, creationist crybaby, you're awesome. Such good questions. Yeah, so I think emotions did co-evolve. That things like our fear response, right? We see something that we need to pump adrenaline to either escape or fight, kind of thing. It triggers a fear response, which leads to either escape or anger, which allows us to sort of deal with that threat, kind of thing. That probably developed first, but these emotions of empathy, for instance, definitely came about sort of as we became a social species rather than an individualistic thinking species. But it was probably other emotions that did develop first that we do see more prevalent among solitary hunters in animals.
Appreciate it, Mark. Praise, floor is yours.
Yeah, I think this dangerously encroaches upon what we call the naturalistic fallacy. It's good because it's natural. And things like moral goodness, badness, they're not evolvable. Like they are what they are. They are non-reductive. They're immaterial. You can't discover them through the scientific method. They're normative. So, I mean, I just think it's a malformed question. But anyway, I'll leave it there.
Mark, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Last word. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the naturalistic fallacy, because you seem to be using it. Either you're using it wrong or misapplying it to what we're saying, because nobody is sort of saying that some of these responses are actually a good thing because they're natural. Take the fear response, for instance, which sort of triggers if you see a darkened alley where you're not, you hear a noise down it, kind of thing. It's not a good thing that happens in modern society, not necessarily good, because you're jumping at things that may not in fact be there. And we're not saying that just because it's natural, it's good. What we're saying is that it developed alongside cooperative species. Like, you have no obligation to be cooperative with the rest of humanity. However, you're not going to last long in that society if you're not cooperative.
Mark, thank you for the final word. Creationist Crybaby, appreciate the question. CC's now got a question for Praise. So the question is, if evolution is true, wouldn't animals with altruistic traits survive better than ones without them?
Not necessarily. I mean, if you look at the lion eating the lamb or whatever other creatures it eats out there, it survives basically on violence, not altruism. I mean, this it's pretty brutal out into the wild. I mean, I see snakes eat things. I see even bugs. They'll even kill things like spiders. Like I don't see any altruism at all. And if there's like weird instances, like it's an anomaly. Usually, it's an anomaly. Like maybe sometimes I've actually seen some weird things. Like I've actually seen a lion actually go to a baby deer and like lick it and stuff, and they didn't kill it. So I don't know what's going on with it, but I don't see it. I don't see any altruism in any evolutionary process. But I'll hand it to Mark.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so that is true, but it was animals with social tendencies. So altruistic traits seem to form more in animals with social structure rather than animals without it. Praise is completely wrong. In fact, hippos save zebras from crocodiles a lot of the time, just because they don't like crocodiles thriving. So altruism can occur through selfishness. So if I want the best society for myself, then it behooves me to be altruistic towards others because it gets you to a better society. So if evolution is true, we would expect social animals with altruistic traits to survive better and solitary animals without altruistic traits to survive better. And that is exactly what we see.
Thank you, Mark. Praise, you get the last word this time. Question was for you.
Yeah, I mean, ask a bear if he cares whether if he has any emotional sentiment to another animal. Like he's going to rip their heads off and eat it. What about the Komodo dragon? It actually eats creatures backwards and slowly does it while they are crying and moaning in pain. So where's the altruism there? I'm sorry, no, Mark. I mean, that's just special pleading. And you can't get even like something that's descriptive. You can't get something that's prescriptive of it anyway. So it's pretty useless.
Since it's an important question, did you want a 30-second response, Mark? And then we'll give
No, that's okay. I want to keep to the format kind of thing.
All right. Good job, guys. You're doing a great job here. So lots of good questions that I'm sure we could spend a lot of time on. And so I appreciate the way it's moving along smoothly. So Ken Rock's got a question for Praise, and short and sweet. If Praise, is killing some morally right? If not, why?
Well, I mean, is he making the distinction between killing and murdering? So not necessarily killing is not morally or not only wrong. Like let's say like an execution. Like I said, if there's a mass murder, I would say that execution, capital punishment, would be morally right because you're taking them out of existence that they don't deserve to live. I just think that's a good principle. Retributionism itself has been proven to be a justified principle. I would say even objectively in a lot of literature out there. So if that's what he's at, I'm not sure like what he means. I think I try to address that best as I can there.
Appreciate it. Mark, floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I agree with Praise that sort of killing someone isn't necessarily morally wrong, but that would be a moral sort of universal rather than sort of. I get what he means, though. I think he's talking about murdering someone. The problem with Praise's outlook is if you believe that God wills it or it's in God's nature to punish somebody for some transgression, then murdering them is perfectly acceptable because God natures automatically makes it good. Because there's so many instances of the Bible where people are given these murderous punishments, and as long as it is sanctioned by God, then it is a good thing. So it leads you down a hole that you can never get to under something like secular morality, which says that the well-being of people is paramount importance. Where you say, well, if you murder somebody, that's obviously infringing on their well-being and is unacceptable.
Thank you, Mark. Praise, you get the last word.
So without a moral arbiter, then whatever Mark just said is completely irrelevant. So yes, so God is the necessary moral arbiter, and then, yeah, even with someone that does a high-handed sin, that God is basically bringing a just judgment to a person, to a holy, righteous God. See, I don't think Mark understands the standard, or that of the holy, righteous standard of God. That it's even one infraction of the law, it denotes death, because he is so righteous and holy. And I mean, Mark's other standards, it's just flimsy. Like, anyone could just choose anything. It's just whatever what people choose, and that just what makes it right or something. And so I would say, yeah, I mean, for any morality to exist at all, there has to be an ultimate arbiter. And I think I tried to show arguments for that tonight, but I'll end it there.
Okay, appreciate it. Praise. Next question comes in. Eric Peterson, thank you for the super chat. Also, thank you to everybody who sent in super stickers and super chats, just showing some love and support, but not necessarily with a question. So I do appreciate all of that. So Eric Peterson does have a question attached to his. Thank you very much, Mark. So question for you, Mark. You say morals are given by society, and our laws and morals were established by a primarily Christian worldview. You seem to embrace this, ?
Well, I mean, sort of, so morals and laws were sort of passed down. Yes, that some of them were based on Christian values, but not everywhere in the world, Eric. Japan certainly wasn't based upon a Christian worldview, and they have sort of laws that are commensurate with our own, but not identical. They have morals that are different, but as I said, like, there are certain moral things for humans that it seem to apply throughout every society. So there are these moral standards that we kind of agree on. It's not like most of the world is not actually Christian. Like, you've got to understand that you live in America, sure. That was definitely influenced by Christian worldview. I think it was also influenced by the Enlightenment as well, and deism, which sort of said, and as I pointed out, and you can look this up yourself, whether deism was the primary influencer of the United States Constitution or whether it was Christianity, you'll find that it's actually deism. That has no, God has no effect on laws and morals in a deistic society, because God is so far removed from the world that it just doesn't really matter anymore. And you'll find that that I do embrace, that a sort of secular system. And there isn't many theological systems left throughout the world that are not secular, usually only in Islamic countries, and they are pretty grim, and they're not based upon Christian worldviews either. So I think maybe you need to sort of look at the world more rather than just your backyard, and understand that morals are something that we develop rather than coming from any one worldview. I certainly wouldn't claim that Christian worldview didn't have an influence on sort of, our laws and structure, but I don't think it was necessary for it.
Thank you, Mark. Praise, floor is yours.
Yeah, actually, if you do a little research on secular philosophy, anti-realists, they say that, for there to be moral laws, there would have to be a lawgiver, and they concede that. So it's just so much more natural. It's I think it's a common sense approach that morals come from a lawgiver. Unlike the anti-realist camp, they're saying no, that's just completely arbitrary. It just came through some type of randomness and whatever they're going to try to posit. But actually, moral laws indicate a lawgiver.
Appreciate it, Praise. Mark, you can have the last word.
Yeah, only theists say there's moral laws, and nobody apart from theists say there's moral laws, because that sort of suggests an objective moral standard. So, the whole idea that moral laws must need a lawgiver, you've got to demonstrate that there's moral laws to begin with. Look, as I've said, there's secular countries out there that do not use the Christian worldview. Christianity has really been struggling to catch up lately. The things that Christianity used to do for not believing in Christianity have been swiftly outlawed by nearly every single government around the world. If you want to like do an inquisition these days, you're not allowed to get away with it. You're sort of trying to take all the good. And don't forget that moral values existed way before Christianity. They existed in the ancient Greek days. They existed before then in ancient Mesopotamia. They existed for a long, long time before Judeo-Christianity was even a thing. And we know this from the ancient Egyptian sort of hieroglyphs and the Book of the Dead from Egypt and things like that. It all predated Christianity, and they're still there. So I think that it comes from a lot of different places, including sort of Greek philosophy and thought as well. And that's what morality is. It's a combination of ideas.
Can I say something really quick for you? Just something quick. Okay,
well, hey, just one sec. So if you do, though, it's going to have to go back to Mark, and then he'll get the last word still.
All right.
So,
I just wanted to cite Schaefer Landau. He is an atheist philosopher, and he actually said that. So Mark's absolutely wrong. Sorry, that was a false statement.
Okay, Mark, over to you.
Well, I mean, if he's talking about like moral laws, the lawgiver is humans, but you're sort of coloring it as there must be a God if there's moral law.
He says God the lawgiver. No, he says God.
So an atheist says, like, look, praise. I've called you out before about misquoting.
I'll show you, Mark.
You're saying an atheist said that there's a God the lawgiver. That's not an atheist then, praise.
No, he doesn't believe it, but he's saying that if moral laws exist,
we'll give your citation in the chat, and we'll see if he's talking about a God.
Yeah,
go for it.
Okay, appreciate the back and forth there. Always fun. Centurion 737. Question for Mark: what process in evolution developed morality / free will in humans, but not the same morality / free will in animals?
So the points that I stated that were the development of morality in humans were a higher level of intelligence, a higher level of communication, and a higher level of technological progress. Those were the three things that I gave. So those three things make us morally more developed than animals, but we still see these moral traits in animals, as I sort of went through in my opening, like pointing out various times where animals have acted morally. And, briefly in this Q&A where hippos save zebras from crocodiles kind of thing. So, there are these moral foundations in animals, because of course, without the technological intelligence and sort of the communication abilities, they won't have a codified moral standard. So that's why we don't call it morality. It's sort of a moral root or a moral foundation.
Appreciate it, Mark. Praise. Yeah, go ahead. Floor is yours.
So evolution developed morality. So no, it just, if anything, the only thing evolution would produce is just behavior and emotions. That's it. I mean, morality is a separate category. It's a categorical error to compare emotions and what people's feelings are. That it has nothing to do with morality. So I think it doesn't make any sense. But also, free will is not the free will in animals. Well, I mean, they don't have do they have a soul? Like, I guess they have I guess maybe the Hebrew Bible might say they have a soul. So maybe to a degree they do. But I'll leave it there.
Mark, over to you.
Yeah, and I don't know where you've put it, Praise, but I'm not getting that citation of this atheist that believes in God that you're claiming exists. So just throw that in as soon as you can, so I can look at it. Yeah. So why don't emotions and behavior have an effect on morality? Why isn't that important to morality? Your emotions about how you feel about a certain situation, if that's evolutionarily developed, and your behavior is what you choose to do about that emotion, then why does that have nothing to do with morality? Why is that not important? If I feel for praise, he gets hurt, and I feel for him, why would that be insignificant? Praise asked for a citation. I can probably look it up, but if you could tell me where you got it from.
Yeah. So the citation is John Foster, the Divine Lawmaker. In fact, I'll just put it in there. But Lectures on Induction, Laws in Nature, and the Existence of God, Oxford, 2004. Let me put it in there for you. And I gave you actually the quote itself too. So yeah, again, like I proved you wrong. Like I don't know how many times tonight.
So it says if there are any moral laws, then these two require a lawmaker. So it's if there are moral laws, not there are moral laws. But
I never said that. I says atheists recognize if there are moral laws, then yes, it points to God. You can't have moral laws without a lawgiver. Yeah. That's what I. And then I said.
Then I said that atheists don't think there's moral laws, and you said yes, they do. This was from an atheist.
Well, no, I says that atheists recognize that if there are moral laws, then it's connected to God.
But then I said that atheists don't think there are objective moral laws, and you said no, this was from an atheist, so atheists do. Praise, you're out of your mind. What are you doing?
I think you just misunderstood what I said, that's all.
I think you don't remember what you said, seriously, because my entire point was that atheists don't think there are moral laws. And you said, but this was written by an atheist. That was the entire conversation, Praise. Rewind it and have a watch.
No, I said it's natural to believe that there are moral laws, and since there are moral laws, it's natural to believe that a God did it. Even atheists admit that, and I demonstrated that through the citation.
Yes, but atheists don't think there's moral laws.
I never said they did or didn't.
Moral laws. Okay, this is such a weird conversation. Look, why aren't emotions important to morality? If I feel like praise, I feel for praise because he's been hurt, why would that changing my behavior to help him not be emotions and behavior? This can be, recognized by psychology. It can be recognized in MRI machines, as I pointed out earlier. We can view these things. We can understand them. It doesn't have to be some ephemeral thing from a supernatural being that's unfalsifiable. And I don't remember what I was going to say, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, so you're basically, I mean, Praise, this basically says if there's moral laws. You haven't demonstrated there's moral laws, so it's kind of a moot point.
Okay, gentlemen, appreciate the back and forth there as well. Lots of great discussion. Okay, so next one that comes in is more of a comment, and it's a comment towards you, Mark. There's a couple comments basically that we'll get to next. So feel free to respond as you'd like to. Alyosha, $10 super chat. Thank you so much. And he says, it's not morals, Mark. It's truth. Truth is not a concept. Truth is a person instantiated by Christ. And any thoughts? However you'd like to respond, Mark.
Well, people will disagree with what the truth is, especially moral truths. I mean, I get that you're claiming that you have the moral truth here. Everybody else is claiming the same. And I get that you think that you have the truth because your truth is given to you by Christ, but everybody's claiming that, Alyosha. You can't actually demonstrate where your truth is better than anybody else's truth that they claim is objective truth. And I don't know how truth is supposed to be a person. Truth is sort of that which comports with reality or conforms to reality. So I don't know how that can be this is just a baffling concept. A truth is a person. So to have truth, do I need to have him around my house? I mean, what are you talking about? I have no idea. This is weird. Very strange.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the response. Praise, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. Truth doesn't care about your feelings or emotions.
Mark, quick final word.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with that. Like, what is true is irrelevant of your emotions. But well, sort of when we're talking morals, it's what's good and bad, which is sort of, I mean, emotions don't dictate that, but they certainly can give you sort of moral intuition that can tell you whether something is good and bad. And if you have a framework in order to judge that, you can tell whether it's objectively good and bad, with reference to that framework, of course.
Thank you very much, Mark. Next one comes in, Eric Peterson, $10 super chat. And I think it's more so a comment, but we'll work through it together.
Sure.
Eric says, protecting the weak, disabled, or defective completely undermines the evolution. So I think evolution. We need to kill off the weak and defective so we can continue to evolve. Mark, make this make sense without contradicting, I guess. If you want to speak to that a bit, Mark.
Yeah, so we've moved out of the realm where sort of weak and disabled are necessarily a detriment to our community. May I point out Stephen Hawking, who added incredible knowledge to our cosmology and our society. And if we killed him off, we would lack so much. You've got to think outside of this box of, well, if it's not beneficial right now, it can't be beneficial kind of thing, because we don't know who's going to provide the next amazing, someone might know how to desalinate water or figure out how to desalinate water really well or collect solar energy really well. And that is not a product of whether they're weak or disabled or defective in some way. It's a product of whether they can give us that knowledge. We don't know where that will come from. We don't know the interactions that people have. And yeah, we've kind of disabled evolution because we have modern medicine to make up for it. But what we do have coming is direct genetic manipulation, which can make up for that. It is possible that in the future we can change ourselves to whatever we want. And that's amazing. And it will come with the knowledge, maybe from one of those people that you have labeled defective, who are not in fact defective, like Stephen Hawking, who was an amazing mind who gave us so much knowledge.
Thank you, Mark, for the response. Praise, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I kind of brought this up earlier in the discussion, that supererogatory acts that go beyond obligation that nature can't account for. And since there is heroic, praiseworthy acts, therefore that denotes the Christian God, because I would say the Christian God is the only supererogatory God out there. He proved that through a self-sacrifice of the cross, and I think that's pretty much demonstrated. So great point, and I hope people look into this stuff.
Mark, over to you.
Yeah, and I forgot to point out that my morality isn't evolution. As I said, like Praise kept making this mistake, the naturalistic fallacy, by applying it, where just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good. We don't think that evolution is necessarily good for our society. That's like saying, hey, if the chimpanzees all attacked one another, they would be better off. No, they wouldn't. That may be an evolutionary trait in competition, but it's actually incredibly detrimental to them. So again, what I'll point out is the well-being of humans and human societies is the basis for my morality. How would killing off people be beneficial or allow the well-being of humans or human society? It wouldn't. So that's why we don't do it. Like, none of our morality is based upon evolution. You've got to get that out of your head, because you are committing the naturalistic fallacy. You're thinking, hey, you think this is natural, it must be good. No, that's not what we're saying at all. Nobody is proposing a moral system based on evolution. Nobody, except maybe, some crazy extreme, sort of geneticist or some person that believes in eugenics or something. I'm not saying they couldn't be out there, but I would sort of certainly question their rational mind if they were proposing something like that.
All right, Mark, thank you for that final word. Gentlemen, that wraps up the audience Q&A. Excellent job. and we moved along smoothly, had some good back and forth. And as usual with our audience, just a ton of fantastic questions. And so I do want to thank Mark and Praise for a very memorable debate. Clearly, the both of you have put some solid work into this.
Sorry, Donnie, can I just interject? There will be an after show on Grayson's channel, Based Theory, and I can give you a link for it if you want. So after show at Grayson's.
Absolutely. Grayson, since you have a wrench, can you, he's under Base Theory right now. Can you post the link in the chat and I will pin it? Since we do still have, actually, here's Doki Doki Bible Club. I appreciate it, brother. So if he posts the link in the chat, he has been doing so all throughout the show. Here it is.
The Dokester.
Oh, sorry. I was not watching the chat at all. I apologize if I'm just reiterating the same thing.
No worries. I appreciate the reminder. So Base Theory, who has been here many times, and he'll be here tomorrow. So we'll be having a good Chromosome 2 Fusion podcast debate. Looking forward to it. And so, okay, well, gentlemen, Mark and Praise, again, thank you for the exciting debate. You did not disappoint. Let's get some final words, final thoughts before everybody heads over to the all-nighter after show on morality. So, Mark, let's start with you. Again, as always, a pleasure. Final words, final thoughts?
Yeah, morality is incredibly complicated. It's one of the most complicated topics that we sort of examine. What we're proposing, or what the secular humanist response is proposing, is one that focuses on the objective of well-being for all humans, the support of all humans going into the future. Will asteroid mining be good or not? Is that sanctioned by God or not? We have no way to tell. What we want is a system where we can go, okay, can we evaluate if this is good for humans or bad for humans? Whether it will allow us to flourish or not allow us to flourish, or will it hold us back? And unfortunately, a lot of the principles espoused by sort of the theists, and especially Islamic theists and some of the Christian more radical theists, are going to stop humans from flourishing because they do not address the well-being of us. I've been an atheist for a long time. I've made mistakes. I've done things that are bad, of course, because we all learn as we go along. But just because we all learn and we all put into practice a moral system doesn't mean it isn't important. It's so important, and it's not illusory. It's something that is important because we are important, and we can do that ourselves. I don't need a God to give me morality to be a moral person. All I need to do is value you, and you value me, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for those final words, final thoughts. Again, the after show link is pinned in the chat. And if you've liked what you've heard from Mark, his YouTube channel is also linked in the description box. So people, please check that out. Praise I Am, always a pleasure as well. Some final words, final thoughts. And again, thanks for doing this.
Man, you're a beast moderator. I have to say you're the best out there. You're very professional, sophisticated. You're non-biased. You even put me in my place, and I hope people look at that, because if you think he's biased, just look at tonight. He put me in my place.
No, I think Donnie's a really good moderator. I think that he's also, like, I've never had a debate that I've ever had with him that hasn't been well organized, and I know him weeks in advance of when it's coming. So organizational skills, great hair, he's got it all. Yeah.
Indeed. But I just want to say really quick, I think with Mark that I think he's putting the cart before the horse. I mean, all theists have to do is, all we know is if something is true or false. We don't care if there's certainty. We don't care. You don't need certainty. You don't need to even know if it's right or wrong. We just need to know if it's true. We don't need to know the the grand understanding of all truths or anything, or of all of morality. We just need to know something is true or false, and then that's basically our position. But I'll look for me if you would have the after show there, Mark. I'll maybe see you there. I'll be there in a few minutes. I got to eat something. But God bless you, SFT, and thank you so much, Mark, for your time. And I think it was an emotional topic, and I appreciate you standing up for your position, by the way.
No worries. Thank you, Praise.
Well, you both did a fantastic job. I appreciate the kind words. Debaters and guests like yourselves make it very easy and enjoyable to moderate. So I appreciate the professionalism from the both of you. And again, for the third or fourth time, seriously, I appreciate all the work you both put into these debates. So Mark, Praise, thank you for doing this. To the audience, thanks for tuning in. Share this content around. These kinds of debates are important because it gets us out of our theological and just worldview echo chambers, gets us into the debate octagon where we can duke it out on some of these important topics. And lastly, base theory in the chat. Grayson, he is having an open mic discussion over on his channel. I assume it's kicking off pretty quickly after this one. So head on over there and check it out. With that, Donnie is out.